So,
Yeah, and I.
so.
Yeah, and I.
We're on the air.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Select Board's call to order March 18th, 2021 at 6 p.m. I'm going to open the public meeting. First, I'm going to take a roll call of the Select Board. Sheila?
Here.
Pat?
Here.
Ed?
Here.
Mike?
Here.
Here.
This is a virtual board of the Selectmen and Budget Board meeting. We're using the Zoom conferencing format. The webinar ID is 953. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Select Board's call to order March 8971. 2021. If you wish to make a public comment and speak on an agenda item, please use the raise your hand feature on your device. The moderator will be notified, Sheila, and will unmute
Here.
you. Please identify yourself before making any comment. Ed? April, would you like to open up the budget board meeting?
I would. This is the budget board. I'll take attendance. I'm here.
Zoom conferencing format.
Michelle?
The webinar ID
Here.
is
Grace?
953
Here.
50
Dan Beard?
94 8971. If you wish to make a public
on mute.
comment, he's waving.
He's muted.
He's there.
Please use the raise your hand feature.
All right, Dave
on your
Betsis?
device. The moderator will be notified.
John Dykstra?
And will unmute.
Here.
Please
Alan
identify
Evelyn?
yourself before making
Here.
any comment.
David James?
Hey, here.
April,
Hi,
would you like
Leffler.
to
Here.
open up the budget board meeting?
Dimitri? He's not
I
here
would.
yet.
This is
Stedman?
the budget board.
Here.
And Steve
I'll
Turner.
take attendance.
Here.
I'm
All
here. So we have a quorum. Michelle?
You certainly
Here.
do.
Grace?
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and
Here.
turn this over to Lori.
Dan Beard?
for the budget, for the budget 2020.
He's on mute.
He's waving.
He's muted.
Okay,
There.
so I'm just
All right,
gonna
Dave
tell
Bettis.
David
Here.
that we're gonna bring
John
Jamie
Dykstra?
up and
Here.
then Craig,
John
so if he
Evelyn?
wants to get them ready,
Here.
because Jamie will be quick.
James.
Here.
Ty Leffler.
So tonight
Here.
we're gonna go over our
Dimitri,
capital
he's
improvement
not here
budgets
yet.
and outside
Debbie.
agencies.
Here.
So this
And
is the
Steve
night
Turner.
where we finish up
Here.
anything in the
All
budget
right.
that we haven't
We have a
already
quorum.
covered.
You certainly do.
If you guys have any
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead
questions,
and turn
feel
this
free
over to
to
Lori
raise your hand and ask.
the,
I'll just stop for a minute
budget-
before
for
we
the,
start.
budget
See if
2020.
anybody has any questions or other thoughts
Okay.
before we begin.
Sure.
So
Yes.
I'm just gonna tell David that we're gonna bring Jamie up.
I'm not seeing
and then
any.
Craig, so if he wants to get them ready. 'cause
So
Jamie will
if
be
you
quick.
go to page 37 in your
tonight we're gonna
budget,
go over our
this
capital
is the
improvement budgets
capital
and outside
outlay
agencies. So this is the night where
overview
we
that
finish
I
up anything in the
prepared.
budget that we haven't
I will
already
just
covered.
note
If
that
you guys
the
have any
capital budget
questions, feel
is
free to
made
raise your
up
hand and
of
ask. I'll just
various
stop for a minute
departments,
before
some
we start.
reserve accounts,
See if
and
anybody
some
has any
for
questions or other
expenditures that
thoughts
we'd be
before
making
we
in one
begin.
year. I've outlined them in this, in these purple pages.
I'm not
We
seeing
are
any.
looking at, just
So
under
if you go
$1.4
to
million
page,
that's part of this
37
operating
in your
budget. I've included a
This is
chart that
the,
shows you
capital
the past 5 years, how
outlay,
much we've put
overview
towards
that I
capital. You
prepared.
can see that last year,
I
as
will
part of
just
FY21,
that
we
the
reduced
capital
capital,
budget
so
is
it was just
made
a little
up
under 1.2 million, so it's about a
various departments,
$200,000
some
increase
reserve
this year.
accounts and some for
We do have a
expenditures that
capital
we'd be making
reserve
in one
fund
year.
balance account.
I've outlined them
And
in this,
that
in these purple
started
pages.
because
We
the fund
are
balance is
looking
basically,
at,
if we don't spend all the money we've been authorized, or we take in more revenue than we had budgeted, that goes into our fund balance. And that's there to offset needs for cash flow throughout the year, since we receive about 85% of our funding from two tax payments a year. And we also use that to, if things don't go well, so if revenues don't come in as predicted, or something unexpected comes up, the town can go to the fund balance. So having a fund balance that is healthy is important to the fiscal sustainability of our community. So the selectmen a few years ago adopted a policy that set it at 18% of annual expenditures. So that includes all expenditures, school, municipal, and county, because we are the one funding source for all three of those entities. Anything above 18% at the end of the fiscal year as part of the audit, we go back to the selectmen. The selectmen will transfer anything above 18% to our capital reserve fund balance. So that way we kind of know what's available in capital reserve funding that we could contribute to the budget and what is expenditures. So that includes all expenditures, school, municipal, and county, because we are the one funding source
Like you
for all
froze,
three
Lori.
of those entities. Anything above 18%
Part
at
of
the end
our
of the fiscal year as part of the
capital
audit.
budget,
we
and
go back
in
to the
our budget,
selectmen,
we have
and
shown
the selectmen will
that
transfer anything
transfer
above
from
18%
capital,
to our capital reserve fund
projects
balance.
would be
So that way we kind of
$225,000.
know what's
That's
available in
down
capital
quite a bit
reserve
from last
funding
year,
that
as last year
could
we put quite a
to
bit
the budget.
into
And what
capital. So last year we have to make up for some of the outstanding capital, and rather than go into more detail, I'm just gonna
Like you
start
froze,
going through
Lori.
the departments, and they'll be giving you information on each of those capital items. Any questions at this
Capital
point?
budget.
One question, Lori.
in our
What is the
budget, we
balance
have shown
currently?
That transfer
capital
from
reserve?
capital.
In the capital reserve, Jen?
projects would be 225,000. That's
Yes.
down quite a bit
Let
from
me
last
look
year, as
that
last year we
up.
put quite a bit into capital. So last year we have to make up for some of the outstanding
At
capital.
June
And
30
rather than go into more
of last
detail,
year,
I'm
we
just
had
gonna start going through the departments, and
786.69.
they'll be giving you
But then out of
information
this current
on,
budget,
each of those capital
we
items.
are
Any
taking,
questions at this
sorry, I
point?
have to find the right
One
papers
question,
here.
Lori. What is the
Yes.
balance currently? The capital reserve.
in the capital reserve.
This
Jen?
year, we budgeted to use, yes, let me look that up. 325 of that, so 786,
At June
325,
Of
one
last year,
six.
we had
461 and we added 10, so
But then out of this
471.
current budget,
Okay.
We
Thank you.
are taking, sorry, I have to find the right papers here.
So if there are no other questions,
786.
let's go to
This
page
year, we budgeted to
193.
use
And Jamie Mitchell is here, our town clerk. Each year, we have been funding
325 of that.
an amount
so
to preserve our record
786,
books, and so we've asked for 5,000 this year. Jamie?
461
Hey,
and we
good
added
evening,
10,
everyone.
so
I
471.
hope you're all enjoying that it's still light out at 6 o'clock like
Thank
I
you.
am. So our budget item asks,
So
as
if
Lori
there
said, for
are no
$5,000
other
and it's
questions,
for record
let's go to
preservation.
page
And just to kind of give
193.
you an idea, right now we're
And
working on
Jamie Mitchell is
preserving
here, our
the
town
books that
clerk.
hold the town
Each
records
year,
from
we have been funding
1966 through
an amount to
1976 with
preserve our
the
record books, and so
$5,000
we've
you can
asked for
do
5,000 this year.
full
Jamie?
books.
Hey, good evening,
And these
everyone.
books are
I hope
actually,
you're all enjoying that
if
it's
you're
still
wondering
light
how
out at 6
often
o'clock
we
like I
kind
am.
of get into them or access them, they were
So,
integral
our
in
budget item
when the
asks,
Goose Rock
as
speech
Lori said, for
use
$5,000
agreement
and
was
it's
going
for
through,
record
and even
preservation.
today,
And just to
you
kind
know,
of give you an idea,
the
right
trustees
now,
for
we're working
KKW needed
on
some information going back
preserving
to
the
like a
books that hold the town
1921
records
special
from
meeting. So I had to pull those books out and
1970.
you know, by preserving them, we don't have to worry about
$5,000
anything
we can
happening.
do
It's the only
2
records
full
that
books.
we have that
And
we
these
can go
books
back
are
and access.
actually,
You know,
if
even
you're wondering
touching
how
the paper
often
with,
we kind
you
of
know,
get into them
fingers
or
from the day
access
you're
them,
concerned if
they
you're
were
gonna
integral
smudge anything or
in,
put, you know,
when the
leave
Goose Rock
fingerprints
speech
behind. So
use
it
agreement was
is
going
really
through, and-
important that we
and even
preserve these
today,
records. We do
you know,
utilize them
the
often.
trustee for
It's
KKW needed some
expensive to do
information
so,
going
but
back
it's
to like a
important to
1921
maintain the
special
integrity
meeting.
of the
So I had
history
to
of
pull
our
those
records.
books out, and
So that's what
you know,
we
by
would be looking
preserving
at
them, we
doing
don't
is
have to
the
worry
two
about
books, like
anything
I
happening.
said.
It's the only
um,
records that we have.
Any, if
that
there's
we can
any
go back
questions,
and
I'd be happy to
access.
answer them.
You know, even touching the
I have a
paper
question,
with, you know,
and probably this
fingers
goes
from
to
the
you,
day
Jamie,
you're
and,
concerned
and
if you're gonna smudge
April
anything
and
or put,
Tracy,
you
if
know,
you're
leave
listening.
fingerprints behind.
It seems
So,
we've been
it is
been
really important that
allotting
we preserve
$5,000
these
a
records.
year
We do
for this
utilize them
for most of
often.
my life.
It's
Is
expensive
there any
to do
way to
so, but
budget
it's
more and
important
move it
to
along?
maintain the
Or
integrity
is
of
it
the
not that
history
important
of
to
our
do
records.
that? But this has been going on
So
forever.
that's what we would be
And I
looking
don't
at
know if we're
doing
just
is
help
the two books, like I
various
said.
committees and
um,
boards in the town if
And
we
if there's any
move this
questions, I'd be happy
process
to answer
along
them.
a
I
little
have a
more.
question.
I know,
and probably this goes
not
to
to
you,
speak for
Jamie,
Tracy,
and-
but Tracy and I have had several
April and
conversations over
Tracy,
this,
if you're
and,
listening.
and it is important,
we've been-
and it would be
we've been
valuable. We
allotting
could do it quicker with more
$5,000 a
money,
year for this
but we always come
for
up
most of my
against
life. Is
what are the other
is
needs
there
that
any way to budget
warrant
more and
needing
move it
money more
along?
than
Or is it
this
not that
project.
important to do that?
Certainly,
But
the more
this has
money
been
that
going
we
on
have, the
forever.
more records we can
And I don't know if we
maintain, but
just
it
help
is, you know, it's a
various
little bit
committees and boards
expensive,
in
so
the
the
town
route that we're taking
if
is
we
the best we can
move
do
this
with
process
what
along
we're asking.
a little more.
So how far
I
back,
know,
when was the
Not
first
to speak
book?
for Tracy, but
redone?
Tracy and I have had several conversations. That would be a question for April,
And it
because
is
I believe
important,
she
and it
started
would
this
be
endeavor.
valuable. We could do
It's
it
gotta be
quicker
20
with more
years.
money.
I
Anyway,
started
but
asking
we
for the
always come up
$5,000,
What are the other
but
needs
some of the
that
books were
warrant
preserved
needing money more
before
than
I
this
got
project?
there.
Certainly, the more
but
money
we
that
go
we have,
back,
the more records we can
Like, we
maintain,
have
but
books
it
that go
is,
back to
you
the
know, it's a little bit
1600s.
expensive, so the route that
And
we're taking
because
is
the
the
town
best we can do.
started in
with what we're
1653, the town
asking.
was incorporated in
So how far
1653.
back,
So we
when
have
was
records
the
back
first
that
book
far. We even
redone?
have one book that was on
That would be
display
a
at the
question for
National
April,
Archives
because
in
I believe
Augusta,
she started this
the
endeavor.
State Archives in
gotta be
Augusta,
20
because we
years.
have a
I
Declaration started of asking for the Independence in $5,000. one of our record books.
But some of the
We're
books
one of
were
only 3
preserved
towns in the whole state
before
that have it.
I got
So,
there.
you know,
But we
it's
go
great to
back-
have these records
like, we
preserved
have
and
books
slow
that
and
go back to
steady,
the
you know, that's how I
1600s.
figured. I figured we'd never get a whole lot of money if I asked, so I started asking for $5,000. I figured that was a modest amount.
So we have
We could
records
get,
back that far.
you know, several
even
books
have
done a
one book
year,
that was
and
on display
we've
at the
crept up. We're now into the
National
60s,
Archives in
so
Augusta.
we've made a lot of
The State
progress.
Archives in Augusta.
So you,
because
we
have
started
the
earlier,
Declaration of
we started in the
Independence
1600s,
in one of our records.
all the way
Yeah,
back.
the
We're
books
one
go
of
back
only
that
3
far.
towns
Yeah.
in the
Have,
state
have we
And
preserved
they-
everything from 1600s
So,
to the
you know,
60s?
it's, yes, we
It's
did
great to have
everything
these
old
records
first.
preserved and
All
slow
the
and
old
steady,
stuff
you know,
first,
that's
and then
how
we
I
started
figured-
with the assessing
I
books.
figured we'd never get a whole lot of money
that
if I
were
asked,
newer.
so I started
So all the
asking
old
for $5,000. I
stuff
figured
that's
that was
really
a modest
important
amount.
is all
We could
done.
get,
Good.
you know,
How
several
many
books
David
done
birth
a year,
certificate in the
and
1600s,
crept up.
Alan?
We're now into the 60s, so
Actually,
we've made a
Alan
lot
and
of
my
progress.
husband could have ancestors in
We
there.
started earlier.
Yeah,
a few started in
we
the
don't do birth
1600s.
records back that
All
far
the way
because we
back.
didn't become a
The books
state
go
until
back that far,
1820.
yeah.
And have-
So
have
all
we
the
preserved
records before
everything from
1820 are
1600s
in
to the 60s?
Massachusetts. Yes,
So
we did
April, how many
everything
can you
old
physically-
first.
or
All
Jamie,
the
how
old
many can
stuff
you
first,
physically
and then we
do in a
started
year?
with the assessing books
So we
that were newer.
outsource a company that
So
does
all
them,
the
and they
old
can do
stuff
as
that's
many
really
as we
important
can
is
pay
all
them
done.
to do.
Good.
But
How
like
many-
I had mentioned, the $5,000 actually will cover about
Actually,
two
Alan
town
and my
record
husband
books.
could have
So
ancestors
for the
in
years,
there.
We got
Yeah,
a
we
few.
our
don't-
intention
we don't do
is
birth
to
records
send
back that far
the
because
town
we didn't
records
become a
from
state until 1820.
1866 to
So all the
1971
records before
and
1820 are
1972 to
in Massachusetts.
1976. And that would
April, how many
take
can
up
you
about the
physically- or
5,000 that we're
Jamie, how
asking
many
for in
can you
this budget.
physically do So we're in a 40 years behind.
So we outsource a company
It's-
that
it-
does
it
that.
sounds
and
like
they
we're
can
doing a
do
10-year
as
swipe
many
each time,
as
so
we
in
can
4
pay them
years,
to do.
we'll be up
But
to date.
like I had mentioned, the
Does that sound
sooner
good?
if we get more money. I mean, it's all up to you guys, really. Town record books. So
No,
for
it's
the
not up
years,
to us. It's up to the
our
voters.
intention
Those
is to send
records were not in
the town
danger
records
of
from
losing other than by
1966
catastrophe.
to
I mean,
1971
they're relatively
and
recent. yeah.
1972
Correct.
to 1976, and that would take up about the 5,000 that we're asking.
Well, thank you
So-
for the update.
So I didn't know that this was gonna generate that much conversation.
It's
Come
gonna be a
on.
long
That's
night.
very
Swipe
interesting.
each time. It's gonna be a long night. We'll be up to
We'd
date.
like to move it along a little bit.
Does
Or
that sound good?
sooner if we get
See,
more money.
see
I mean,
see it
it's all up
finished
to
in
you
our
guys, really.
lifetime, or mine, anyway.
No, it's not up to us.
So does anybody have any other questions for
Those
Jamie?
records were not in danger of losing other than by
Okay.
catastrophe.
So we're gonna
They're
say
relatively recent.
bye to Jamie, and
Correct.
is Chief Sanford here? Here he is.
Hi, Chief.
So
Hello. Well, thank you.
we are on page
So I didn't know that this was
194
gonna generate that much conversation.
and 195, which is the capital outlay for police and communications.
Would like to move it along a little bit.
And so I believe Chief Everett is
see it-
gonna
see it
come up
finished
as
in our
well to
lifetime,
do
or mine,
communications
anyway.
radio tower. Is that correct, Chief Sanford? So does
Yes, it
anybody have
is.
any other questions for Jamie? So I'll let you start with police then.
Good.
Okay.
All right, good evening,
So we're
everybody.
gonna say
So,
Bye to
on
Jamie and
just the
is
police
Chief
capital side of the
Sanford here?
house,
Here he is.
we were
So-
asked during the budget process
We are on
to
page
consider
194
the town's commitment to improving the environment
and
and all the
195,
issues
which
that we're
is
seeing
the
with our
capital outlay
environment.
for
So,
police and
in order to do that,
communications.
we looked at what
And
we
so I
purchased,
believe
and one of the
Chief
big
Everett is
things
gonna
was
come up as
were
well to
vehicles.
do communications
So
radio
we
tower.
took a
Is that
long look
correct, Chief
at
Sanford?
electric
Yes, it
vehicles,
So I'll
hybrid
let you start
vehicles,
with
and
police
our
then.
common
Good. All right, good
avenue
evening,
that we
everybody.
normally
So,
purchase cruisers.
on
And this is
just the
what we
police
normally
capital
do
side of the
when we
house,
replace a cruiser.
we were
And I'm
asked
speaking
during
here
the
for
budget
a
process
Dodge Charger.
to consider
You know, the normal
the town's
purchase price for a
commitment
brand
to
new Dodge
improving the
Charger is
environment,
around
and
$29,000.
all the
minus the
issues that we're
trade-in
seeing with our
And any
environment. So,
changeover costs
in order
to
to do
include
that, we
equipment that
looked
needs to
at,
go in that
what we
vehicle for a
purchased,
total of
and one
about
of the big
$32,000.
things
That's a
was,
normal
were
gas-powered
vehicles.
vehicle that we
So
would
we
normally
took a
ask
long
for.
look at electric vehicles.
This year,
hybrid
we
vehicles
and our common
we
looked at a
avenue
hybrid.
that we normally
So,
purchase cruisers.
Hybrid
this is what we
vehicle we
normally
can get
do,
in the
when we
Ford
replace a
Explorer
cruiser.
with
And I'm
a
speaking
purchase
here for,
price
a
of
Dodge
about
Charger.
$39,000.
You know, the normal purchase price
minus
for a
the
brand
trade-in
new
that
Dodge
we would
Charger
normally
is
get,
around
and with the hopes of
$29,000,
being able,
minus
that
the
Maine
trade-in
carries on with the
and any changeover
efficiency
costs,
Maine
to
rebate,
include
we would be able
equipment
to
that
get
needs to go in
an
that
additional
vehicle
$6,000
for a total
in
of about
rebate
$32,000.
off that
That's a
vehicle.
normal gas powered
And then The changeover in equipment cost would be a little bit more because I'm swapping out a Charger for a Ford Explorer, and the equipment doesn't fit in there.
Looked
And
at
all the equipment
hybrid
and
vehicle we can
mounts
get
and
in the
everything.
Ford Explorer.
They don't swap
with a
over
purchase price
easily in
of
different
about
vehicles at all.
$39,000.
So we're looking at a
minus
total
the
price of
trade-in that we would normally get,
$42,000
and with the
for
hopes of
a
being
hybrid
able to
vehicle,
get
which would
maintenance
be
on
gas and electric.
Efficiency main
So to try to
rebate,
figure
we'd
out
be
if
able
it's
to
worth
get
us to do
additional
that,
$6,000 in
Ford
rebate
actually
off that
has
vehicle.
and then
they have equipment costs would be a
this
little bit
tool
more
on their
because I'm
website,
swapping out
and
a
I looked
Charger
at
for
our
a
most
Ford Explorer,
recent
and the equipment doesn't fit
usage
there.
of a
It's,
Ford Explorer, and in 2019 we
all
bought
the
a
equipment
new
and,
Ford Explorer,
mounts and
and
everything.
we bought it
Um,
and
they don't
received it
swap
in
over
about
easily
February.
in different
So
vehicles
from
at all.
February
So
to
we're looking at a
the
total
end of
price
the
of
year that year, we used we
for
drove at
a
42,000
hybrid
miles
vehicle,
in
which
one
would
year.
be gas and electric.
I
So
figured
to
out
try to
how much
figure out
gas
if it's
we had
worth
put in
us to
it,
do
and I got
that,
an average gas
Ford
mileage
actually
of
has
13.5 miles per gallon.
They have
So you
this
divide
tool
that
on their
up,
website,
and
I
then you
looked
factor
at
in the
our most
fuel,
recent,
and you get your fuel costs.
usage
I'm trying to
of,
move you guys around here.
Ford
So your
Explorer.
fuel
And in
costs
2019, we
for
bought
that, just
a new
that
Ford
year
Explorer,
alone, was
and, we bought it and
$7,777.
received it in about,
So using
February.
Ford's
So from February
estimations,
to
they
the
estimate
end
that
of
their
the
hybrid
year that
vehicle
year, we used, we
gets
drove
about 24 miles per
42,000
gallon.
miles
So
in
you
one
plug
year.
that into the same
I figured out
information,
how much gas we had put in,
and you'll
I
get a
got an
cost
average
saving,
gas
a
mileage
fuel cost of
of,
about
13.5 miles per
$4,375.
gallon.
So
you divide that up, and
we use a vehicle
you
about
factor in
3.5
fuel,
years.
and you
So
get
I
your fuel
multiplied the
costs.
savings
Trying to
there
move you guys
of
around here. So your fuel
$3,400,
for
and over the
that,
total
just
life
that year alone
of the
was,
vehicle, it's about a $12,000 savings. So it pays for the difference of the added cost for the hybrid, plus a little bit, so you're saving a little bit.
gets to
So,
about 24 miles per gallon.
I think
So you
it's
plug
smart
that
for us to
into
try
the,
and see
same,
how it works
information,
for us here in
and you'll get a
Kennebunkport.
cost saving, a fuel cost of about
We did look at an all-electric
$4,375.
vehicle.
So
It's so new, the technology, that
we use a
for
vehicle
law
about 3.5
enforcement purposes,
years,
it's kind of
so I
tough.
multiplied the savings there of
They don't make
$3,400.
equipment for it
And
yet for
total
police
life
use.
of the
There's still some
vehicle,
things
it's
to
about
work out.
$12,000 savings. So it pays
There's still
for
some
the
things to work
difference
out as
of the
far
added
as
cost for the hybrid, plus
use
a
in
little
cold
bit, so you're
weather
saving a little
and
bit.
and things of that nature.
I
I've
think
hired
it's
a
smart
couple
for
of
us
bigger
to
guys
try
that probably wouldn't fit in
and
those
see
small
how it
all-electric
works for
vehicles
us
right
here
now
in,
anyways.
Kennebunkport.
So it looked like a
And,
clown car.
We
But
did look at an all-electric
that's what I have
vehicle.
right now, and we're
It's
recommending
so
that we
new,
go
the
ahead and for
technology
this
that,
year's vehicle
for
purchase,
law
we
enforcement
try
purposes, it's kind of
a hybrid vehicle.
They don't
Any
make equipment
questions?
for it yet for police use. There's
I
still
have
some
none.
things to work
I
out.
think it's a good idea.
I apologize.
There's
do
still some
too.
things to work
I do
out
too.
As far
Alan?
as,
I think
use
there'll
of
be
cold weather
additional
and,
savings on fuel
and things of that
as
nature.
well,
I've
because we're
hired
gonna
a
see,
couple of
we're
bigger
seeing it
guys
going
that
up, and
probably
the
wouldn't fit in
forecasts
those
are,
small all-electric vehicles
could
right
go
now
up quite a
anyways.
bit.
So it
But
looked like
I
a
guess my
clown car.
question relates to the charging stations.
That's
and
what
the
I have right
cables.
now, and we're
I own
recommending
a
that we
hybrid
go ahead
vehicle.
and for this year's
The
vehicle
cable
purchase, we
for
try
the
and,
plug-in hybrid was
a hybrid vehicle.
$500, and the charging station required
Any questions?
a 220-volt charging station. There'll be some additional
think it's a
cost in
good
that. Have
idea.
you figured that in?
The hybrids,
I do
don't
too.
Yeah, so we,
require-
Alan?
don't require it.
Yeah, I think there'll
The
be
gas
additional
hybrids do
savings on
not
fuel
require a charging
as
grid.
well, because we're gonna see. Is this a plug-in hybrid? The forecasts are.
no,
could
it is
go
not,
quite a
sir.
bit. Oh, okay. I guess my question relates to the charging.
The
stations
all-electrics were,
and the
and the
cables.
electric charging
I own a
stations were
hybrid
about
vehicle.
$9,000,
The
when we were
cable
looking at
for
it,
the plug-in
additional
hybrid was
cost.
$500, and the charging station required a 220-volt.
Any other questions?
There'll be some additional cost in that. Have you figured that in?
Okay,
The
I guess
hybrids,
we can bring up
don't-
Chief
Yeah, so
Everett and talk about the
require it.
communications.
Do you want to
The
just
gas
talk about
hybrids
your
do not require
replacement
charging.
computer
Is this a plug-in hybrid?
No.
in your
okay.
capital
Oh, okay.
for the patrol
Yes.
PC?
Okay.
The all-electrics.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
and the
each
electric
cruiser
charging
actually
stations were
has
about
a
$9,000,
computer in the vehicles.
We were looking at
And
additional cost.
it's a computer that actually allows us to Any other
scan
questions?
licenses and things of that nature, and our computers that are in our
Okay,
cruisers
I
are
guess,
aging.
we can bring up
So
Chief Everett.
this
We can
patrol
talk about the
PC is a lot
communications.
more durable.
Do you want to just talk
and,
about your,
it's a normal
replacement
replacement issue. I think our in-house computers
In your
are 4
capital
or 5 years old now.
for the,
And
patrol
as you know,
PC?
in technology wise, that's
Yeah,
way
so,
old for a computer.
each cruiser
So
actually
we
has
just need to
a
replace
computer
one
in the
patrol
vehicles.
PC.
And it's a computer that
questions
actually
for
allows
Chief
us
Sanford?
to scan licenses and things of that nature, and our computers.
Okay, I'm not
that
seeing
are
any,
in
so
our
why don't I
cruisers are
turn it
aging.
over to
So,
Chief Sanford
this
and
patrol
Everett
PC
to
is a
discuss
lot
the
more durable,
communications,
and,
radio
it's a
reserve?
normal replacement issue. I think our in-house computers are 4 or 5 years old now. And as you know, in technology wise, that's way old for a computer. So we just need to replace one patrol PC.
Any questions for Chief Sanford? Chief Everett, are you there?
I am.
Okay, I'm not seeing any,
is it
so
on
why
the-
don't I
is it on
turn
the
it
screen?
over
It
to
is,
Chief
it is.
Sanford and
You
Everett
were being so
to
quiet. I
discuss the
wasn't used to that.
communications, radio reserve?
I was muted. I won't lie. I wasn't being quiet. So Chief Sanford's going to start the first part here.
Okay, so this is just a review for most of you, but some of you may not have known. We put a committee together about 2.5 years ago.
Chief Everett, are you there?
Go ahead, Chief, and go
Okay.
through the next
Is it
one.
on
This
is it on
committee
the screen?
was all
It
the
is,
folks that
it is.
are really
You were being so
involved
quiet. I
with the
wasn't used to
radios
that.
and dispatch. And
I was
use
muted.
those
I
communications.
won't lie. I wasn't
So
being
everybody
quiet.
had input. We were seeing some serious issues
So,
ever since
Chief
I got
Sanford's
here
gonna
in
start on the
2011,
first
which
part
is 10
here.
years ago, believe it or not.
Okay, so
The
this is just a
police
review
radios
of,
have really
for most of you, but some of
been
you may
affected
not
by
have,
poor
have
reception.
known.
And if you
we
think
put a
about it,
committee
everybody
together
in their
about,
house now has all kinds of
2.5 years
wireless
ago.
items. They have
Go ahead, Chief,
energy
and go through,
saving lights in their
next one.
homes.
This
And
committee
all of that
was all
stuff
the
is
folks
affecting our
that are really
communications. So right
involved,
now,
with the radios and dispatch.
a patrol
And,
officer working
use those
cannot talk to
communications.
dispatch on their
So
portable
everybody
radio
had input.
from Dock Square.
We were seeing some serious
From
issues
Goose Rock
ever since I got here in
we were in a
2011.
domestic
which is 10 years ago,
situation
believe it
today
or not.
on Whitten Hill Road.
The police
We had to use
radios
phones
have really
because we just couldn't talk to
been
dispatch on
affected
the
by
portables, which are the small
reception.
radios that sit on
And
our
if
hips.
you think about it,
So it's a serious
everybody,
issue that we
in
need
their
to
house
address,
now has all
and
kinds of
we involved all
wireless
these
items.
folks. Go ahead.
They
for
have
the next slide,
energy
Chief.
saving lights in their homes.
Our radios
that stuff is
are
affecting
so
our
old right now
communications.
that they
So right
cannot
now,
be repaired or
a
fixed
patrol officer,
by our vendors
working
or
cannot
Motorola.
talk to dispatch on
They're
their
older
older
technology
from
and
Dock Square.
some of them,
from Goose Rock
especially
Beach,
the
we're
dispatch
in a
stuff,
domestic
is
situation
almost
today
over
on
20
Whitten
years
Hill
old. So
Road.
it's
And we
important
had
for
to
us
use phones
to try
because
to
we
take
couldn't
care of
talk
those
to
things. Go ahead,
dispatch
Chief.
on
On the portables, which are the small radios that sit on our hips.
So it's a serious
Again,
issue that we need to address.
You know, a
We
lot of
involve all
our
these folks.
issues
Go ahead. For the next slide, Chief.
are not just because the
Our
town's
radios,
growing or
so
you know
old right now
there's a
that
certain
they
tree in
cannot
the
be,
way. It's all
repaired
new
or
technology.
fixed
You think about it,
by
10,
our
15 years
vendors
ago,
or
we didn't have half the
Motorola.
stuff in our homes that we currently
Their
have
older
now,
technology,
and it's all
and,
becoming an issue for us. So
you know, some of them
because of the aging
especially,
system
the
and because
dispatch
of
stuff
our
is
inabilities to
almost,
talk to each
over
other,
20 years
it's a
old, so
serious
it's
issue that
important
needs
for
to be
us
addressed,
to
not just on the
take care of
police
those
side,
things.
but
Go ahead,
also
Chief.
on the fire side as well. Go ahead, Chief.
Again,
So this is what our system kind of
you know,
looks
a lot
like.
of our issues
On the back of the police
are,
department right now,
are
not
not just
just two
because
towers.
the town's growing or you
and
know
it,
there's a certain tree
it
in the
worked
way.
great,
It's all
you know, when it
all new
was put
technology.
in
You think
20
about
years
it, 10,
ago,
15 years
but
ago,
it
we
doesn't
didn't have
work
half the stuff in
anymore,
our
and
homes
it's
that we currently have
definitely
now.
a life safety
it's
issue.
all,
Go ahead,
becoming
Chief.
an issue for us. So because of the aging system.
So the plan is,
because of our,
and we've spoken to our
inabilities
vendor,
talk to
which is
each other,
two-way,
it's a
to
serious
build a
issue that needs to
robust
be
and
addressed, not
sustainable
just on the police side, but
radio
also
network
on
that
the
works
fire side as well.
for
ahead,
all of us. It's going to
So this is
use
what our system kind of looks
current
like.
town assets,
on the back
which
of the police department
we're,
right now,
in hopes
you
of
see
putting a
those two
tower at
towers.
the sewer department. And
one down at
it
Goose Rock
worked
Beach
great.
Fire, you know, when it
We're
was
hoping
put
that
in 20 years
it's
ago.
definitely going to
but
improve
it
our
doesn't
coverage
work
and
anymore, and
reliability,
it's
and it's going to
definitely a
bump us up
life
into the
safety issue.
digital
Go ahead,
world,
Chief.
which is where everything is headed in
So the
today's
plan
world.
is,
And it's
we've
also gonna
spoken to our
allow us
vendor, which is
to,
two-way, to build
bring
a
on
robust and
other folks
sustainable,
from other departments
radio
and even
network
possibly
that
the
works,
schools once we
for
get
all of us.
everything set.
It's going
Go ahead,
to
Chief.
use
So it's a little bit
town
different in the
assets,
fire
which,
world, but it is all
we're,
going to be
in
one
hopes of
radio
putting a tower
system
at
where
the
we're all
sewers
going to be able to
department,
still communicate with each
and
other.
one down at Goose Rock
But
Beach
because of
Fire.
some
We're
differences
hoping
that
that
the fire
it's
department
definitely gonna
needs to
improve
page
our
out
coverage
calls
and
and things like that, it's going to
reliability,
be a
and it's
little
gonna
bit
bump
of
us
a
up into the
different
digital world, which is
platform.
where everything is
But
headed
like I said, it
today's
will
world.
still be able to
And it's
communicate
also gonna
with
allow
everybody
us
in
to,
town that we currently
bring
do.
on
So
other
the
folks,
footprint for
from other
the new
departments
towers,
and even
this
possibly the
circle here,
schools,
it's a six,
once we
it's
get
it's
all
a
everything
6 foot
set.
circle. So the
Go ahead, Chief.
the towers themselves are a little bit smaller than that because they fit on this base.
but it is
The highway department is going to be able to help us out with the groundwork.
going to be able to still communicate
To help
with
us
each
save some
other.
money. This is
But
just a
because of
side
some
view of what
differences
a
that,
tower would
the
would
fire
look like,
department needs to page out
that it
calls
tapers
and
as it
things
gets
like
to the
that.
top.
It's going to be a little bit of a different.
But the real
platform.
pictures, these
But
next
it's-
couple slides
like I
are
said,
for
it will still be
where
able
we're
to
at
communicate
currently.
with
And
everybody
so
in
when
town,
you look in
that we currently do.
and see
So the footprint for the new towers,
whoops.
this circle here, it's a six.
Clicked when I didn't mean to.
6 foot circle. So
Where
towers
the pink
themselves
and
are a little bit,
orange to the yellow
smaller
and
than that
green,
because they fit
that's
on this
areas that
base.
we have really good
The highway
coverage right now.
department's
This
gonna
is
be
our
able to help us
single,
out with the groundwork.
that pink dot
help us
is
save
over
some
the
money.
police station
This is
because
just
that's
a
where
side
all our
view of what
our,
a tower would look like.
radio traffic comes
that it
in and out
tapers as
from.
it gets to the top.
And you can see the blue, the darker,
real
the bluer
pictures,
areas,
these
the
next
violet,
couple
those
slides
are
for where we're
kind of
at
the other
currently.
side of the moon.
And so when you look in
the
and see
the communications aren't very good at all. So in proposing adding the two
clicked when I didn't mean
towers,
to.
this is what
where
the coverage
pink and
looks
orange
like.
to the
So
yellow and
we have
green,
a lot more of the
that's
town
areas that we
in
have really good
the
coverage
yellow,
right now. This is
greens,
our
and
single-
lighter shades of blue and
that
less
pink
dark
dot
colors,
is over the police station
showing
because that's
where the
all our
reception won't be
our,
that great. And some of this is
radio
based
traffic
just
comes
on
in and out
topography of the town. The hills and
you can
valleys
see the blue,
are
the
where
darker, the
we
bluer
have the
areas,
most
the
trouble
violet,
getting the
those
signal
are
in and out of.
kind of the other side of the moon.
So we have some
The
costs.
the communications
So
aren't
we
very
first
good at all.
started that we were gonna look at doing this over time and phase it in over a number of years. But as we got looking at the numbers,
we have a lot more of the town
the number of
yellow,
1.373
green, and lighter shades of blue
is
and
what we
less
got a
dark
year ago,
colors,
and
showing where the
it
reception
went up
won't be that
about
great.
120,000
Some of this is based just
in
on
that year,
topography of
8%
the town.
due
The
to
hills
other
and
costs
valleys are-
that we're going to
are
have
where
to incur.
we have the most
And
trouble
we
getting
got
signal
looking
in and out
into
of.
bonding,
we have some,
possibly doing the bond that would help us do it all at once.
So we first
in the long
started
run
that
keep
we were
our
gonna
costs farther
look at
down
doing this over time and phase it
as
in
we
over
put because
a
we were
number of
putting
years.
money
But as we got
each
looking at
year.
the
We have it in
numbers,
the capital to put in
the number of
250,000 like we did last
1.373,
year,
is
and
what
then
we got
we're looking
a year
to
ago,
bond the
and
rest, which is about $1 million.
it went up about 120,000.
So is it just a quick
in that
breakdown
year,
of where
8%
things
due to
are
other costs
are going?
that we're gonna have to
So
incur.
in dispatch,
And we got looking into
140,000. The radio room that has
bonding,
all the controls
possibly
at the
doing the bond,
PD,
that would
200,000.
do it all at once.
Things
in the
like
long run,
that.
keep our costs
How
farther
it breaks down by
as we put because
actual
we're putting
location.
money each year. We have it in the capital.
And then
put
what
in,
the radio costs.
250,000 like we did
Sorry,
last
excuse me.
year.
This is for the towers. What the
And
what
then
the
we're
towers
looking
would
to
be.
bond,
What the
rest
engineering
about a
costs are, because they actually have to make this whole radio
So
system
is it just a quick
in the lab and
breakdown
then
of where things are
program every
are
single
going,
piece of it to
so
work
in
with
dispatch,
the whole system and the labor involved in that.
140,000. The radio
and then
room
we
that
have what
has
we
all the
look at,
controls at the
what the
PD,
two towers are going to cost us, which is
200,000,
around 360
things like that.
to have them
How it
installed
breaks
and
down by
wired up. Actual location. That is all I have here. And then what the radio costs, excuse me, this is for the towers, what the towers would be.
A question,
the engineering
I noticed
costs
the
are, because they
coverage is
actually
still
have to make
pretty
the
darn
whole radio
sparse
system
in the
in a lab and
northwestern
then-
part
and
of the
then
town. Is that,
every single piece of it to
is there a
work with
concern, or
the whole
are we
system
holding
and
back
labor
on covering
involved
that
in
because of cost? Or is there really
And then
not
we have
that
what
much
we look
need
at
for
what the
coverage in
towers
that
are gonna
area.
cost us, which is around.
I think one important
have them
thing to note
installed
too is, which they
wired up.
didn't cover, but as part of the study,
is
they
all
also looked
I
at our
have
call
here.
history for the past 10 years, as well as our population, and they mapped that as well. And where you see the three towers is really where our majority of our call volume and
Northwestern part of the town.
and population is. So in that corner, you're right, we would still be lacking a little coverage, but we have a lot less calls and population in that area.
In that area.
I think
And
one important
down
thing
the
to
road,
note
should
too
things
is,
change in a
which they
big
didn't
building
cover,
boom
but
out that
as
way,
part of the study, they
another
also
tower
looked
could
at
be
our
added at
call
another
history
time
for
that
the
would,
past 10 years,
you know,
as well as our
that could take care of that.
population, and they mapped that as well. And where you see the three towers is really where
Steve?
our majority of our
Chief,
call
what would be
volume
the
and-
installation time? When would you
and,
expect that this
population
would
is.
be
So in
built
that corner,
and
you're
ready for
right, we would
use?
still be lacking a little coverage.
I'm really hoping
but we
that
have a lot
with,
less calls and population
I think
in
I
that
might be
area.
in a little bit of a fantasy world, but within a year, but
And
where everything is,
down the road,
everyone is
should
so
things
busy on
change in a big
all the different
building
things that we
boom out
need,
that
the
way,
tower installation
another
company
tower
and-
could be
and
added
those
at another
things.
time that would.
We actually
you know,
hadn't
that-
really
that
gotten
could take
quite
care of
that far yet, because where we thought we were gonna have more time for this, now we're trying to
Steve?
get all our answers.
Chief, what would be the
now
installation
for
time?
how it's gonna work
When
and
would
what
you
we need to do.
expect that this
um,
would be
But
built
I'm guessing
and ready
it
for
could be in
use?
place within a year and a half.
I'm really
would be,
hoping that with
a pretty good educated guess. I think
might be in a little bit of a
I was told
fantasy
even
world,
less
but
than
within
that,
a
sir.
year,
Probably
but
looking like
where
6 to 8
everything
months
is-
when I spoke to him.
Everyone is so busy.
You know,
on,
if everything lined
all the
up
different
and,
things that
you know,
we need,
another
the
catastrophe
tower
didn't hurt,
installation
hit where we had to
company
shut everything
and
down
those
again.
things.
6 to 8 months would be
We
a
actually
realistic
hadn't
time
really
frame.
gotten quite that far yet, because where we thought we were gonna
So
have
that
more
was a
time for this,
lot of information.
now
I just
we're
want to
trying get all our
clarify a couple of
answers,
things. The budget committee will be asked
now
two
for
different
how it's gonna
questions
work and
regarding
what we
this.
need to do.
So last year,
But
we committed
I'm guessing it could be in
250,000 in our
place within a
reserve
year,
account,
year and a half,
and that
be,
was approved and it's in our
pretty good
reserve
educated
account.
guess, I think.
This year,
I
I
was
am
told even less
proposing
than that,
another
sir. Probably looking like 6 to 8
250,000.
months when I spoke to him.
So that would bring us
You
up
know,
to
if everything lined
500.
up and, you know, another
In
catastrophe
the
didn't
past
hurt,
month,
hit where we had to
the
shut
two
everything down
chiefs
again.
went to the
6
Board
to
of
8 months would be
Selectmen
a
because what
realistic
we're
timeframe.
finding is that with this inflation on materials such as
So
this,
that was a
and
lot of
who knows
information. I
whether
just
that
wanna
will
clarify
continue
a couple
or
of
will
things. The
decrease
budget
over
committee will
time,
be
but
asked two
we're
different
losing our
questions
buying
regarding this.
power, you know,
So
so
last
we
year,
lost half the
we
money we
committed
put away in this
250,000 in our
increase.
reserve
And
account.
so with
and
interest rates
that
being
was
as low as they
approved and
are,
it's
we
in
can
our
borrow
reserve
money over a
This
5-year
year, I
period
am
for
proposing another
1% or under through
250,000.
Maine Bond Bank.
So that would bring
And
us
what
up to 500.
they came back to the selectmen with was,
in the
let's
past
put the
month,
250 in
the two
again this
chiefs went
year
to the
and then
Board of
borrow
Selectmen
the other
because what
million.
we're
We need $1.5
finding
million
is that
total.
with this
So we'd have
inflation on
500,000 in
materials such as
reserves, $1
this,
million that we would bond
who knows
over
whether that will continue
5
or
years,
decrease
and
over
then
time. But
that
we're
would
losing our
be
buying power,
probably
you know,
around
so we lost half the money
$210,000
we
a
put
year
away
payment, which
in
would be
this
less than what
increase.
we're putting in
And so
reserve.
with interest rates
So
being as
we're
low as
also,
they
we're
are, we
asking
can borrow
you
money
about
over a
whether or
5-year
not you
period
would
for
approve the
1% or
250,000
under
going
through
into
Bond Bank.
reserve. But
And
also
what
there would be a
they
warrant
came back to the
article
selectmen with was,
asking
let's put the
to bond
250
$1
in
million
again
over
this year
5
and
years
then
to finish
borrow
up
the other
project.
million. We need $1.5 million total. So we'd have 500,000 in reserves, $1 million that
And it
we
just
would
seems
bond
like the
over,
cost of money is less than
5 years,
inflationary
and
expense
then
at this point.
That
That's the
would
reason for
be
that recommendation.
probably around
Quite a bit less,
$210,000 a year payment,
And folks,
which would
I-
be less than what we're
Folks, I gotta say, that, I wouldn't be asking, we've put up with this for about my 10 years that I've been here, and it's only getting worse, and I'm just afraid something tragic's
But
gonna
also
happen.
there would be a warrant
This is an
article,
absolute necessity.
asking
And it's
to,
not going to get any
bond
cheaper.
$1 million over 5 years to finish up the project.
To do the project, I think the way you're putting it together and putting it to us makes perfect sense.
And it just seems like the cost of money is less than inflationary expense at this point. Does anybody have any
That's
other
the reason for
questions
that
or feedback on
recommendation.
this?
Quite a bit less, actually.
My only thought is it's, we talk about bonding $1 million, taking one at a time. They're all doable. I guess at the end, we'll be able to see where this all stacks up and how much we're doing and what the cost would be, right?
Well, this is an absolute necessity, and it's not going to get any cheaper. to do the project. I think the way you're
All
putting
right.
it together.
So with that, we're
makes
gonna
perfect
go
sense.
to page 196. And Chief
Does anybody have
Everett
any other questions or
will lead
feedback
us
on
through
this?
the fire department accounts.
My only thought is it's, we
All right.
talk about bonding $1 million.
I have no
and
slides
taking
for
one at a
my
time. They're
capital,
all
just
doable.
as it's
I
only
guess
the
at the
couple
end, we'll
items
be
that
able
you
to
see.
see where this
And
all
these are
stacks up and
items that,
how much we're doing and
we've
what the
been
cost would be.
putting money into all
Yep.
along for larger ticket things like vehicle purchasing, air pack replacement. We're staying in the
All
scope
right.
of that in
So with that,
the timeframe.
We're gonna go
The one
to
change
page
is that the money that was
196,
removed last
and
year
Chief
as
Everett
we started into
will lead
COVID
us through the
is
fire
put back
department
in there to
accounts.
keep me at the intervals
I have no
I would be
slides
at.
for my capital, just as it's
So
only
for
the couple
example,
items that
we
you
normally
see.
were putting
These are
130,000
items that,
in
we've
fire
been
apparatus
putting
reserve.
money into
Last
all
year,
along for
we
larger
reduced
ticket
that
things
to
like vehicle
100,000.
purchasing,
So Chief Everett is
air pack
asking for the
replacement.
130 that he
staying in
normally
the-
would, plus the
scope of
additional
that in
30 we did not fund
timeframe.
last year. So that's
The
why
one
it's
change
160
is that
this year.
the money
And
that
the
was
same is true
removed
with
last
the
year as we
SCBA.
started into COVID.
Because he does have it
is
on a
put
planned
back in
schedule,
there
so
to
he's
keep-
trying to get back on
Keep me at
schedule.
the intervals I would be at. I'm
So
You-
for example. Do you just want to talk about your next equipment purchase for
130,000
vehicles?
in
Yeah,
fire
so
apparatus
what
reserve.
I'm looking at
Last
doing,
year, we reduced that
because
to
in the past,
100,000.
when
So
it was a
Chief Everett is
four-company
asking
system,
for
they
the
kind of bought
130
trucks
that he normally
whenever
would,
that
plus
station
the
decided
additional
they
30 we did
needed
not
something.
fund last year. So that's why it's
which-
160 this year.
Now
And
I'm
the
putting
same
us
is
on
true
a
with
more of a
the,
schedule.
SCBA.
But I have a ladder truck and an
Because
engine
he
that are
does have it
due
on a planned
next
schedule,
year
so
and the
he's trying
year
to get back
after.
on
I'm
schedule.
gonna hold on to the engine an extra year and replace them together. And
Do you just want to
keeping
talk
the,
about
at the
your next
130,
equipment
I should
purchase
be
for
where I need to
vehicles?
be
Yeah, so what
to
what I'm
replace
looking
the
at
ladder truck.
doing, because in
That'll
the
be
past,
25 years old
when it
in
was a
2
four-company
years.
system, they kind of
Um,
bought trucks
and
whenever that
I'm hoping
station
to
decided
get
they-
some
they
savings
needed
by
something.
buying 2 trucks.
Which
At the same time, because I wouldn't
now
go to a
I'm
different
putting us
company
on
for the engine and one
more
for
of
the
a
ladder.
schedule.
I would look at getting them
but I
purchased
have a
together,
ladder
so
truck
that
and
would
an
save
engine
us
that are due
some money
next year and the year
up
after.
front.
I'm gonna hold on to the engine.
Can you just give
an extra year
the group
and
an
replace them
idea
together.
how much fire trucks cost nowadays?
Keeping at the 130.
Yeah,
I should be where
we're
I
all
need
sitting
to
down,
be,
so that's good. But
to
replacing
replace
this
the
ladder
ladder
truck, if we decide
be
to go
25 years
with
old
a 100-foot
in
ladder
2
truck,
years.
it's gonna cost us somewhere in the neighborhood of
and
1.1 to
get
1.3
some
million
savings
dollars.
by buying 2 trucks.
And
at
an
the same
engine right
time, because
now,
I wouldn't go to a different company for the engine and one for the ladder.
2 years
I would
ago,
look at
almost,
getting them
Kennebunk
purchased
bought their
together, so
engine
that
for
would save us some,
$529, I think it
some
was,
money,
and that same
upfront.
engine is just over 600
Can you
now.
just give the group
So
an
how far
idea
does
how
our
much
ladder
fire
trucks
trucks
reach
cost
now?
nowadays?
75 feet.
Yeah,
It's a single screw.
we're all sitting
It's
down, so that's
it's
good,
the
but,
question of whether we
replacing
want to
this
go to
ladder
a
truck-
twin screw longer truck.
If we
or,
decide to go with a
No,
100-foot
twin
ladder
axle,
truck,
sorry,
it's gonna
should
cost
say
us
that.
somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.1
or
to
keep with a
1.3
single
million dollars.
axle 75 foot.
And an engine right now,
But even at the 75,
2
we're
years
still
ago,
looking
almost,
at
Kennebunkport
in
bought
the
their engine for
850 to a million
$529,
range.
I think it was, and that same engine is just over 600 now.
Thank you. So
Kai?
how far does our
Course.
ladder truck
Yes,
reach
and
now?
well, the trucks did
75
that.
feet.
The
It's
older
It's a single screw.
volunteers,
It's-
I understand a
it's
few
the
years
question
ago,
of
we
whether we
we
wanna
had
go
a
to twin
demonstration
screw
there
longer
that
truck
you had special
or,
adaptations for
twin
older
axle, I should- sorry.
volunteers and drivers to handle the trucks.
Or keep with a single. axle,
one of the things in
75 foot
the ladder truck I am looking at very seriously
But
is
even at the
it
75,
being
we're still
a,
looking at
they're called
850
towers,
to a
but they
million
have
range.
buckets at the end of the aerial. So my older
Kai?
generation of firefighter
Yes, and well, the
doesn't have
trucks
to
did
climb it
that.
and then go to
The
work.
older volunteers.
But
I
there is
understand a few
obviously
years
added
ago,
cost
we
to
had a demonstration
that
there
compared
that
to
you had
just a
special
straight stick ladder
adaptations
like we have right now.
for older
Right.
volunteers and
There's
drivers
things
to
like
handle
the
the
backup
backup cameras and stuff like that.
Yes,
well,
a lot of
one of the
that would
things
be
in
would be
the ladder
spec'd into the truck.
I am looking at very
be-
seriously
for things
is,
like that for added
it
safety.
being a
there's a lot of things that I
they're
can't
called
not
towers,
put in.
but they have buckets at the
Sure.
end of the aerial. So
by law. my
Thank you.
older.
Makes more sense to me to have
older
a bucket at
generation
the
of
end of
firefighter,
the ladder.
doesn't have to climb it and then go to work. It
just
unfortunately stretches out the length,
there is
which
obviously
then makes
added
it a little
cost
bit harder to maneuver, but it's all training
like we have right now.
we can do it.
Right.
But
There's things
we
like
haven't
the
gotten quite
backup
that far yet,
cameras and
where we're
stuff like
still
that.
2 years off.
Yes, a lot of that
replacing
would be spec'd
I'm sure
into
there's
the
going to be a
truck,
lot of debate within the department.
for things like that, for added safety. There's a lot of things that I can't not.
Is that what you're leaning towards, though?
by law.
Personally, I am, yes.
Thank you.
Makes more sense to me to have a bucket at the end of the ladder.
Any other questions for
Yep.
Chief
It
Everett?
just unfortunately stretches out the length, which then makes it a little bit harder to maneuver, but
I'm not seeing any.
it's all training. All right.
So, thank
We
you,
can do
Chief
it.
Everett.
Thank you very much. Good night. We haven't gotten
Okay,
quite
good
that
night.
far yet,
Thank
where
you.
we're still 2 years off.
So Dave,
for
we're
replacing
looking
that.
for Mike
I'm sure there's
Claus
gonna
and
be a
Chris
lot of debate
Simeone
within
and
the
Eric
department.
LaBelle.
But
Is that what you're leaning towards, though?
personally, I am, yes.
Any other questions for Chief Everett? Are we finding them? Oh, there's Chris. I'm not seeing any.
All right.
So, thank you, Chief Everett.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Okay, good night. Thank you.
So Dave, we're looking for Mike Claus and Chris Simeone and Eric LaBelle. Hi, Mike.
Hello.
So Mike, so Dave, we can say goodbye to Chief Everett. Thank you.
Are we finding them?
So do you want to start
Chris.
off with highway and road and sidewalk and then move to wastewater and piers, or start with wastewater? How would you like to do it?
I'll go since I'm up.
Okay,
I'm gonna,
so we are gonna be on page 197 is where we're starting with the highway equipment. So Mike, so Dave, we can say goodbye to Chief Everett.
and
Thank you.
sharing your screen.
So do you want to start off with highway and road and sidewalk and then move to wastewater
So
and
have
piers?
you
or
guys
start
got,
with wastewater?
let's
How would you
see.
like to do it?
I'll go since I'm up. There.
Okay.
So do you guys have
So
a
we are
picture of
gonna be
my
on
budget
page
costs for FY
197
'22 up
is where
there?
we're starting
Yep.
with the highway equipment.
Okay, so what you're looking at is we've got three capital buckets in the budget for you tonight. We have roads, we have sidewalks, and we have our capital equipment. And I've tried to put it all on one page, and you guys try to make it so we can show you what we've got coming up. Next year, I'm looking to try to catch up on some shim and overlay work around town, and you'll see that in my budget. We picked some roads that we think are good candidates for that. They have not fully deteriorated, but I think shim and overlay on these roads will keep them in very good shape. You won't have to shim and overlay them again for a long time. We have roads, we have sidewalks, and we have our capital. We've put off a little shim and overlay work with our capital improvements the past few years, trying to get some bigger projects done. So probably over the next couple of years, I'm gonna try to catch up on that. some shim and this overlay year, work around town. just looking at that, we've got shim and overlay on that Broadway, Edgewood, Dorrance, fully deteriorated, but I think it's sort of a square off of Kings Highway. You won't have to shim and overlay them. We're looking at getting Elm Street shimmed and overlaid, and down in Cape Porpoise, Fisher's Lane. We put off a little shim and overlay work with. Believe it or not, I had that before. April made her debut on the budget board.
I was wondering about that.
That was not a late ad. This year, Main Street, we're looking to do that little section from Elm Street up to Green Street to finish off what we had done last fall off of Kings Highway. And we've got about half of Oak Ridge Road. We're looking at getting Elm Street. And we'd like to do Union Street and Walker's Lane. And up above, you'll see Ocean Avenue, which I have mill and fill there. Believe it or not, I don't want to overlay that because we're doing that section from Kings Highway up to Chicks Creek. Main Street. That should not say Kings Highway, Chicks Creek. I'm sorry. That should say, up to Green Street. That was last year. So we're gonna go from Dock Square up to Chicks Creek is what we're looking to do, that section. And as you know, as you go up there, going by the Yachtsman and going through town, we've got granite curb as you come out through there, out through that whole section. And if I overlay that, I'm gonna bury a lot of that granite curb, so I'd like to just mill it down and fill it back in, not have to do a lot of sewer cover adjustments and not really affect the road profile at all. But we're gonna try to get that in good shape. It's starting to pothole quite a bit. What we're looking to do, and I think it sees a lot of traffic, which is why you've had the deterioration there. Going through town. We've got a small drainage project on School Street that's right at the entrance to the wastewater access road. So I'd like to just mill it down. And that goes, there's a culvert under there that's a little bit undersized. Where we've had some trouble with flooding in the past, and we'd like to take a look at maybe the road, increasing the size of that culvert and seeing if we're gonna try to make it a little flood-proof in the future. It's starting to pothole quite a bit. And Wiles District Road, we'd like to do some drainage work out there. Just doing some cross culverts and getting that ready for any future repairs. And I've got some survey engineering work to do on Wiles District Road. Once again, as we go through and try to make that road under there that's a little bit undersized. Give that road some more pedestrian access. What do we have for right away, and what engineering problems does that give to us? We'd like to do a little research on that before we get going with reconstructing the road. And Wiles District Road. And then we'll also, while we're doing Ocean Avenue roadway, we're gonna do that section from that Ocean Avenue sidewalk from Seagrass to Green Street. We just know that, once again, we don't want to change the elevation on that sidewalk, so we have to mill it out and fill it up. Make that road. And then finishing up the seawall at the River Club, we've got some money in there for that. Those costs will be coming to us pretty soon as we get to, we've done some demo work ourselves on that. And we're also, while we're doing Ocean Avenue roadway, but there's still some fencing work to do in there, and we'd like to get some additional funds to make sure that all gets done. Sidewalk from Seagrass to Green Street.
So let's just take a breath. So that was actually on pages 196 and 197. So that is the, I'm sorry, not 196 and 197, 198 and 199, which is the road improvement and sidewalk improvement budget. Road improvement total is 414,000 and sidewalks at 105. So does anybody have any questions on that? So let's just take a breath. So that was actually on pages 196 and 197. So that is the, I'm sorry,
see on
not
the
196
start
and 197, 198 and 199,
fall,
which is the
like fall
road
of
improvement and
22?
sidewalk
Should that be really
budget.
21? Is that going to
Road
be this fall, or
improvement,
is it going to be a year from fall?
total is
All this
414,000 and
all
sidewalks
the
at
money
105.
doesn't
So
become
does
available
anybody
till
have
after
any
town meeting.
questions?
So, and I always put fall in there because if I put anything in the summer, I get yelled at. So I put fall in there, and I'll try to beg Lord.
But April's saying it's not 2021, it's 2022.
Like fall of 22?
You're correct.
Should that be really 21?
We could do it in 2021.
Is that going to be this fall, or
Yes.
is it going to be a year from? I mean, because we'll get money in June, so.
Yes, I will start that in fall. I think that is a typo on my spot. We can do those in 2021.
And how far are you going down Fisher's Lane? Are you going all the way to the end, or are you going to stop where the tar stops now?
That's just where the tar stops. Fall in there, and I'll try to beg for.
So you're not gonna go across there
But
with, over the mud
Mike,
flats
April's saying it's
going
not
on with, I think,
2021,
Kings
it's
Highway on the other side.
2022.
Put in a drawbridge.
Correct. We won't tell anyone about that, Alan.
Okay.
We'll just go do it.
Because we'll get money in June, so I.
Yes. I will
Any
start
other
that call. I
questions
think
on
that
road
just-
and
that is a typo
sidewalk?
on Mike's spot. We can do those in 2021, correct.
And
I'm
how
not
far are you
seeing
going
any
down Fisher's
hands.
Lane? Are you going all the way
So
to the
Mike,
end,
do
or
you
are
wanna
gonna
go
stop where
to
the
the
tar stops now?
equipment?
That's
Talk
just where the
about the
tar
truck?
stops.
Okay.
So last year, you guys allowed us
you're
to
not
put
gonna go
$109,000 in the,
mud flats
in the
going on
account,
with,
which we
like,
haven't
Kings
spent.
Highway on the other side.
But has there been
Put in a
funded,
drawbridge.
to replace our 2004 tandem axle truck?
Okay.
And we've done, some more research, try to,
Any other
speaking with our
questions on
vendors,
road and
try to figure out what
sidewalk?
our projected costs are really gonna be coming up. And we think we can get
I'm
about
not seeing any
$25,000 in
hands.
trade for that truck.
So Mike, do you wanna go to
We're
the
projecting
equipment?
the cost
Talk about the
total
truck?
for a new tandem axle is
So
around
last year,
$250,000. allowed us to put $109,000. We've asked for $116,000 in the account to finalize the budget for that truck. To replace our 2004 tandem axle truck. And that's our big truck. Some more research.
Are you gonna stay with an
With our
international?
vendors to try to figure out what our projected costs are really gonna be coming up. And we
Mike?
think we can get about $25,000 in trade for that truck.
You're muted, Mike.
We're projecting the cost total for a new tandem axle is around $250,000. So, all right, I should be back for
Okay, are you
$116,000.
gonna, Mike, are you gonna stay with the international?
The budget for that. I would say Western Star has been very competitive, and that's in other towns, our big truck towns who bought these tandem axles,
Are
so
you
I
gonna
would say
stay with an
it's probably
international?
between International and Western Star.
Okay, they're both good trucks.
Both are good trucks, yes.
Mike?
And this money, oh,
You're
sorry,
muted, Mike.
it's Grace.
You're muted.
This money was budgeted last year and it's still there.
Yes.
So, okay.
All right, I should be back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mike, are you gonna stay with the international?
Any other questions?
I would say Western Star has been very competitive.
Not
in
seeing
other
any hands
other
up.
Towns who bought these
So,
tandem
do
axles.
you
I would
wanna
say
go to
it's
Piers
probably between
now,
International
Mike?
and Western Star. Well, yes, can we just talk a little bit, just to give you a quick
This
update
money-
on the issues
this money-
we've
oh,
had
sorry.
with the
Grace.
corner
This money
that I'm
was
sure
budgeted last year.
Alan and Ed have
It's-
seen, but
it's
my
still
next
there.
slide. Yeah, can you go to my
Okay.
next slide?
So,
Thank you.
so let's just tell people what we're talking about. We're talking about
Any
Cape
other
Porpoise
questions?
Pier. So this is our capital pier account, which is on
Not
page
seeing any
204.
hands up.
And we've got
So,
200,000
do
to
you
put
wanna
into
go
our
to
reserve
Piers
account
now,
there.
Mike?
Okay, and just an issue that has come up recently. This picture we're looking at was taken November 2019, when we all did, we had an inspection of the pier face. And we're looking at the corner going down to the dinghy floats that the lobstermen use. And if you
So,
look
so
on
let's
the
just
left,
tell people what we're
there is
talking
a
about. We're
metal-
talking about Cape Porpoise
metal,
Pier. So this is our
piling
capital
there,
pier account,
that
which is
sort of
on
was
page
supporting that corner.
204.
And that corner
And
gave
we've got
away 2 weeks
200,000 to
ago,
put
I
into
think,
our
about 2
reserve
weeks ago,
account
during a high tide.
Just an issue that has come up.
That metal piling came down, and we lost all these corner pieces.
We all did,
We had an inspection. And now that corner looks like this.
And we're looking at the corner.
So we have, all those rocks are leaning against that pile.
And
And
if you look on the
then
left,
they would,
there
if
is
that
a
pile
metal-
wasn't there, they would just keep going. And we're afraid we're gonna lose the big concrete grade beam up there is the important piece.
and that corner
So we
gave
really don't wanna
away 2
lose much
weeks
more
ago, I think,
foundation
about
than
2
we've
weeks
got.
ago, during a high tide. That
And so that,
metal piling came down,
and
and we lost all these
so that pier, to reestablish
and
that
now
pier,
that corner
what
looks
we're
like
looking to
this.
doing is, if you see those 2
So we
piles we're
have
looking
all
at,
those
and then
rocks
going
are
around the
against
corner
that
where that
pile.
X bracing is.
And then
What we're looking at doing is putting some sheet piling in,
and we're afraid
up
we're
to the
gonna
level
lose
of the
big
deck,
concrete grade beam
down
up there
about
is the
5
important
feet,
piece.
5-6 feet probably into the mud,
So we really
mud
don't wanna
line,
lose
where I
much
think we've
more
got good
foundation than we've got.
ability to hold the piling. And then we have to just take that damage float out and move it over a little and get some sheet piling in on that corner. And that would stabilize the corner. What we're looking to do is, if you see those two piles we're looking at, Barney Baker, our engineering, thinks that will provide some initial help. And then if we want to really work to get a little more stability, that sheet piling is fluted, and we can drop some rock down through the flutes in the sheet piling down, and then it'll fall down into that corner. And then we'd have to just try to get that corner with a little rock fill under it to give it some additional support. And we're getting costs for that. Speaking with Barney Baker, our engineer, he thinks that we should have some cost estimates and a final design fairly shortly, and as soon as tomorrow, I hope. A little more stability. But that's just an unfortunate update of where we are right now. We may have to spend some money just to keep the pier going, and then it'll fall down to that before we get to reconstruction.
Mike, I don't know if we can share it, but I have a picture on my phone of where it's actually washed out. It's a good picture because you can see where the granites come out and the small stone and all the fill those large granite blocks are holding back. They're just pouring out of that hole.
But yeah, I mean, the only way, if you but that's just
Probably not.
an unfortunate update of where we are right now. So we may have to spend.
So Mike, do we want to just kind of go back up to the 10,000 foot level and talk about what our plan was before a couple of weeks ago when this happened? And why how this funding fits into our bigger plan, the requested 200,000?
And the small stone and all the fill.
I think before that, we were looking at, we're looking at doing a major renovation of the pier. And we've been meeting with the lobstermen and the selectmen, and had several meetings on where we're going with that.
Do we want to just kind of go back up to the 10,000 foot level and talk about what our plan was before a couple of weeks ago when this happened? And why how this funding fits into our bigger plan, the requested 200,000?
We are currently looking at doing a EDA disaster grant application, we were looking at, and trying to get that in just as soon as possible. All we're waiting on is one more permit to finish our environmental narrative. We need that. We can't submit the grant without all our permits in place. Where we're going with that, and we're looking to get that. And we've come up with, I think, pretty much plan to replace the. I was hoping to have it this meeting, but it's not going to be. It's not going to be tonight. But as soon as we get it, we'll get that grant application in. Our objective is to get that out to bid as quick as we can and try to get construction started in November.
So we're looking at a combination of a multi-year project with state money, federal money, and town money.
We can't submit the grant without. And it's going to be over 2.8 million total in our cost estimate so far. It's not going to be. And it's, it is a rather complicated project. But we've got costs, as far as keeping the engineering going as quick as we can, and we have match funds that we have to generate.
So we're looking at a combination of a multi-year project with state money, federal money, and town money. So we're looking at about a $3 million project, and we're looking at a town share of that of about $700,000. If we're successful with the federal money, we've already received approval for the state funds for a 2-year plan, right?
Complicated project. Yes. But we've got costs, as far as keeping the engineering going.
Yes, Mike.
We've received that approval that they're going to put in the budget. It has to get past the bond in November. Make sure we have enough money. The state has to wait. DOT has to wait for bond approval before they.
So we're looking at about a $3 million project, and we're looking at a town share of that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. How much money was that from the state for those two?
We've already received.
They're looking at two $250,000 grants in their 2-year, and but it's in a 2-year plan.
Yes,
So they give
yes,
us,
Mike.
we received that approval that they're gonna put it in the budget. It
We
has to get past the
received
bond in
one
November.
at government
Right,
works, yeah.
that means the same program.
The state has to wait.
Yeah, same
the DOT
program.
has to wait for bond approval.
So our plan was to have this replacement project started this year. Unfortunately, the tides have, done additional damage that we're trying to address to keep it safe out there, but that is throwing our funding plans kind of into an upside down pattern. So we might be needing some additional funds in order to address this most recent issue. Is that a fair statement, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah, same program. So our plan was to have this replacement
Are we
project
asking
started
that
this year.
now, Lori, or we're just saying that in the
The
future,
tides
this may come up?
done additional damage.
Well,
that we're trying to
we got
address and keep
this
it safe
price
out there,
estimate
but that is
probably an hour before this
throwing our
meeting.
funding plans kind of,
And this is a very, very rough
into,
price
an
estimate.
upside down.
But the price
pattern.
estimate was between
So we might
65 and
be needing some
$85,000
additional funds in order
to do the
address
repairs that Mike
this most recent
described.
issue. Is that a
Um,
fair statement, Mike?
Yes.
And of course, we don't have engineering plans to make these corrections at this point, nor do we have
Are we
actual
asking that
pricing from
now,
a
Lori, or we're
contractor.
just saying
But
that
these were
in the
some
future,
estimates that a
this may come
contractor
up?
gave us. So if
Well,
we are
we
successful
got
with the
that-
EDA
this
grant
price
and the state
estimate
grants, we do
probably
need
an hour before this
700,000
meeting.
contribution. So if
And this
we
is a
have
very,
those
very
funds
rough
in the
price
reserve
estimate.
account now, we could spend,
the
but it
price
means we'll be
estimate
short
was
on the
between
other end.
65 and
I'd look, because this is all
the repairs that
happening
Mike
right now,
described.
we don't have a full
Um,
recommendation for you.
And
But to
of course,
me, this
we
is
don't have
beyond
engineering
what the
plans,
selectmen could cover
to
make these corrections at this point, nor
And
do
it
we
would
have actual
impact our
pricing
future
from a
plans.
contractor. But these were
Lori,
some estimates that a
The
contractor gave us.
65,000 plus, that's
So
to
if
just
we are successful
Band-Aid
with the
the
EDA
immediate
grant and the
the
state
damage that's
grants, we
happened
do
recently.
need 700,000
Yeah.
contribution. So if we have
Do you wanna
those
comment
funds
on that,
in the
Mike?
reserve account now, we could spend, but it
It's
means we'll
as
be
good as
short
we've
on
got
the
right
other
now,
end.
so.
I'd look,
I
because
said,
this is all
It's, I
happening
think
right
our
now.
contractors
we
and
don't have
engineers
a
are
full
working on it as hard as they
recommendation
can.
for you. But to me, this is
I'd like to
beyond what
comment
the
that in
selectmen could
addition
cover
to
from their
just
contingency
these
account. And it
large
would
chunks of
impact
granite
our
moving
future
and the
plans.
gravel leaching
Lori,
out,
the
the actual
65,000
bait
plus,
shed
that's to
floor
just
has buckled. It's
Band-Aid
buckled
the
quite a while
immediate
ago, but
the
it's
damage that's
moving.
happened recently.
And these are all
Yeah.
interrelated. And if the bait
Do you wanna
shed floor
comment on that,
buckles
Mike?
anymore, we're not gonna be able to use it.
It's as good as we've got right now, so.
That's the real
I
problem.
said-
I don't think it's gonna fall into the
I
harbor,
think
but
our contractors and
floor will be
engineers
in
are
a
working on it
position
as hard
where,
as they can.
may become unsafe for I'd like to people to go comment in that there. in addition to
The cost of the town is very real in that case, so
granite
this
moving
needs to be.
and
handled.
the cost, and this is leaching out, that I am lobster bait shed floor has those of us who use the pier, buckled quite a while ago, but that's our livelihood. And these are all interrelated. And if the bait shed floor
Well, the
buckles
whole
anymore,
project-
we're not gonna be able to.
It's good to hear we don't have to fund the whole thing, most likely.
That's the real
If
problem.
we get
We
a
don't
third
have
from
to
the
fall
state, a
into
third from
harbor,
the
but,
Fed,
the floor will be
that-
in a position
I
where
would hope the voters would go
it may
forward with
become
it.
unsafe for people to go in there.
The cost of the
Well,
town
we
is
don't do something
very
soon,
real in
we
that
won't
case,
have
so
it here.
this needs to be.
Yep,
handled.
you're right,
Cost,
Alan.
and this is, that I am allowed. It's certainly one of the most popular destinations in town for people in the summer. That's our livelihood.
People have to earn a living.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, you have to earn a living. That's right.
Well, plus the fishermen that have to earn a living. It's good to
Yeah,
hear we
but
don't
that's
have
who
to
we
fund the
are.
whole
I mean,
thing,
that
most
just,
likely.
it just needs to be
If we
so.
get a third from the
And
state, a third
this
from the
this
Fed.
pier, I mean, it's been there in
that-
one form or another
I
for,
would hope the voters would go forward
I
with it.
dare say, 200 years.
Mhm.
A lot of
Well,
those
we don't do
big
something
pieces of
soon,
granite that
we
you're
won't
looking
have
at
it
have been in that position
Yep,
for at least
you're right, Alan.
150.
In any type
It's
of
certainly one of the
maritime,
most popular
just- it
destinations in
costs.
town for people.
it just
in the
costs a
summer.
lot of money. And people have to earn a living.
So
And we
Lori,
put- Yeah, that's right.
and Mike,
Money and you have to earn a living.
the-
That's right.
Plus the fishermen that have
the
to earn a
that
living.
Mike put
Yeah,
in
but that's who we are.
does
I mean,
not
that just- it
include
just needs to
the
be so.
Band-Aid.
Absolutely.
So
This-
do
this
you want
pier,
to
I mean, you've
add
been
that
there in one
his
form or
budget,
another
or
for,
do you want to take it out of his
I dare
capital
say,
account to get
200
started?
years.
How do you want to go about
A
this? Because
lot
it
of
has
those
to be
big
done.
pieces of granite that you're looking at.
So
are
in
that position for
order
at least 100
to put the Band-Aid in place, probably
any
the
kind of
selectmen
type
will
of
need to
maritime
be looking at in the
just
near
it
future,
costs.
spending some of these
It
reserve
just costs
funds
a lot of money.
that we had set aside for this larger
So
project.
Lori,
And
yep,
so
and
what I'm
Mike,
saying is, I think we would
the-
need to
the,
increase this reserve
the
request.
budget that Mike put in,
You know,
does
I don't
not
know how
include
confident Mike is
the
feeling.
Band-Aid.
Like I said, we just
so
got this
do you
number
want to add
that we
to his
haven't even
budget,
had a
or
chance
do you
to
want to take it out
discuss.
of his capital account to
And
get
so I'm
started?
not sure I'm
How do you
prepared
wanna
at
go
this
about
meeting
this?
to
'Cause it
tell
has
you
to be
exactly
done.
what that amount you should be adding
So
in is.
in
I don't know what
order
Mike
to
thinks.
put
the Band-Aid in place,
If we can, if we can wait till, you know, the next budget board meeting, if we can bring it back to them,
larger project.
I think that would.
So
we
what
can-
I'm
we can
saying is, I think
have a
we would
little
need
more
to increase this
cost
reserve
certainty.
request.
Yeah, and it sounds
know,
like
I don't know
everybody's
how
in agreement
confident
that
Mike
this
is
has to get
feeling.
done.
Like I
So
said,
all
we
we need
just
now
got
is a
this
figure.
number that we
Yeah.
haven't even had the
So-
chance to discuss.
And a mechanism, right, figure and a
And
mechanism.
so I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, we could increase our contribution from our capital reserve account. So it would have a net zero impact
If we
on the
can-
budget, if that's a
we can wait
concern for
till,
people. But
you
I
know,
just
the
want to
next-
make sure we're in
the
a
next
position
budget
to do
board
what we
meeting,
need
if
to
we
do.
can bring it back to
All right,
them,
yeah. I think
that would-
the budget's
we can-
going
we
up
can
enough.
have a little more cost.
At what it is
cost,
now.
Certainty.
Sheila,
So,
you think
yeah,
the
and
budget's
it sounds
going
like
up enough?
everybody's
I'm
in agreement
surprised,
that
Sheila.
this has to get done. So all we need now is
I think
a
it's
figure.
enough, or more than enough.
Well, she was
And
just
a
hoping that the
mechanism,
mill
right,
rate was
figure
gonna
and
be
a
I like that
2.9.
zero
And
effect
the,
on the
and the other
budget.
thing is, we
Yeah.
could increase our contribution from our capital reserve
Is that
account.
right, Sheila?
So it would have a net
Is that what
zero
you said?
impact on
Back
the
here.
budget. if That's a
You
concern
say you
for
wanted the
people.
budget to be
But I
around
just want to make
2.9
sure
and
we're in
mill
a
rate.
position to do what we need to do.
All right, yeah. I think-
So
I think
let's
the
let's
budget's
keep
going up
moving with good news,
enough.
Charlie, otherwise known as
At what
Michael
it is
Claus.
now.
Sheila, you think the
And
budget's
Chris
going up enough?
Simeone,
I'm surprised, Sheila.
And talk about the
I
wastewater.
think it's
So
enough.
normally the budget committee would not have
I was hoping that the mill rate was gonna
a
be
like
vote
that
on the
zero
wastewater
effect
budget
on the budget.
itself,
We all-
but the selectmen are looking to bring a bond package
Is that right,
to
Sheila?
deal with these wastewater
Yeah.
infrastructure issues to
you
the
want the
voters
budget to
on
be
the
around
June
2.9
warrant. And
and
so
the
the
mill rate.
budget board will need to make a recommendation on that bond article.
let's keep moving.
So I'm
with
going to
good
turn it
news,
over to
Charlie,
Chris
otherwise
Simeone
known as Michael
and
Claus.
let him update you.
And Chris
Hi, folks. How's
Simeone,
everybody doing?
And talk about the
Hi, Chris.
wastewater.
Hi
So
there.
normally
gonna
the
share my
budget
screen.
committee would not have a vote on the wastewater budget itself. But the selectmen are looking
everybody
to
see
bring a
that?
bond package
Yes.
Yes.
to deal with these wastewater infrastructure issues.
As Lori
to
had
the
stated,
voters
this
on
is
the
kind of a
June
unique
warrant, and so
situation
the budget
because,
board will need to make
we're
a
currently
recommendation
requesting a
on that
bond.
bond article.
So I kind of want to
So
provide
I'm gonna
everybody an
turn it over to
overview
Chris Simeone
of
and
the several
let him
proposed
update you.
projects that we have.
Hi, folks. How's everybody
This is
doing?
kind of basically
Chris.
a refresher for
Hi
the
there.
selectmen. They've already
I'm gonna
seen
share
this,
my screen.
but the budget board has not. So the proposed projects total $6.3 million, 300,000 of
Everybody
which
see that?
is engineering
Yes.
costs, and then
Yes.
$6 million
Okay.
in bond funds for the
So as
construction.
Lori had stated, this is kind of a unique situation because, we're currently requesting a bond. So I kind of want to provide
So just a
everybody
little bit
an
of
overview,
background.
the several
So
proposed projects.
the town of
that we
Kennebunkport
have.
wastewater
This
department,
is kind of
we initiated several
basically
projects
a refresher
in
for
July
the
of
selectmen. They've already
2018
seen this,
with funds that we
the
had
budget board has
acquired through
not.
the Clean Water State
So,
Revolving
The
Fund.
proposed projects total
Two
$6.3 million.
documents that we needed to
300,000
actually
of which
procure this
is,
money
engineering costs, and then $6
were a
million
fiscal
in
sustainability and a
bond
climate
funds for the
adaptation plan.
construction.
And both of these documents were completed by Wright Pierce in June of 2019. And basically, we're going to be using these two documents to
So just a little
drive
bit
a
of
20-year
background.
capital plan.
So the town of Kennebunkport.
So the fiscal
wastewater
sustainability
department,
plan,
we
what it
initiated
is it's a
several
study to
projects,
determine the conditions
in
of the
July
town's critical
2018
assets at the
with
wastewater
funds that we
treatment
had
plant and the town's collection system. The collection system being the pump stations and the sewer mains. Documents that we needed to. Each system will be identified and scored with a conditional assessment, where this assessment will place values to answers based on two questions. And that is, what is the likelihood of failure and what is the consequence of failure? And basically, we're going to be using these two documents. Each system will be prioritized based upon answers to these questions. So the prioritization will be placed in the wastewater capital to determine the conditions for consideration for the next 20 years. Treatment plant. And the intent of these plans and projects is to maintain and improve the integrity and the functionality of the wastewater infrastructure within the town. And, each system will be identified and scored with a conditional assessment. This assessment will. So this plan identified a lot of assets as really having that is what is the likelihood of failure life remaining. Consequence of failure. It was kind of a lot to start with. Each system will be prioritized. Looking at it from a priority standpoint, we kind of settled on three upcoming placed into a wastewater capital. So one is a rehabilitation of both circular clarifiers. The second being the replacement of 3 pump stations to maintain and improve the integrity and the functionality of the wastewater infrastructure within the town, and then replacement of our 2 current belt filter presses for everybody. So this plan, the secondary clarifiers, these are responsible for removing floating and settleable solids from the wastewater after the biological treatment. It was kind of the picture on the left is the exterior of the building. For anybody that's been there, those are the circular buildings that we have. We kind of the picture on the right is basically the internals to that structure. So one is you're looking at is the stilling well. Circular clarifiers. Basically the stilling well provides an area for the wastewater to kind of Creek and Walls District Road be stagnant and allow it to replacement of our or settle out of it. And what you see on the right-hand side, is secondary basically this entire structure is failing and it's failing quickly. From the wastewater after we have several holes, some of which are visible here. There's several on the backside as well. That we have, and this is causing short circuiting of the water. Is basically the internals to that structure. What you're looking at is the stilling well. The pump stations, these 3 pump stations are basically kind of what we call the main train. Be stagnant. These pump stations are responsible for conveying all the wastewater that's collected. And what you see on the right-hand side, in the Cape Porpoise area, and transporting that back to the failing and it's failing quickly treatment plant for treatment. We have several holes. So some of which I'm sure most everybody here is familiar where the Walls District pump station is. The picture on the right, we had a gate valve failure back in January. The pump station. It was, thankfully it was caught. Basically, kind of what we call the main working train. During business hours. These pump stations. The crew was moving ahead of Woodard and Curran to install pressure gauges, so that Woodard and Curran could figure out what the in the Cape Porpoise area and head pressure was on these force mains treatment plant for when they arrived at Wells District Road. The valve. I'm sure most everybody here is familiar picture in the picture on the right, the red valve. There's actually a gate valve that's there that basically positively closes and prevents any backflow from the water that's currently in the force main. Thankfully, it was caught. That had failed and was leaking during business hours profusely under the floor. Ahead of Woodard and Curran. It was caught in time. We were able to secure 3 pump trucks from Nest and Sons on very short notice on these. But that took us an entire day. When they arrived at Wells District Road, basically put in a quick repair, which was a check valve. In the picture, it's not what's supposed to be there, but it allowed the pump station to stay up and running until we could make a more permanent repair. Any backflow from the water. We had to order a valve. These aren't something that you can get short notice. That had failed. There's different lay lengths and bolt patterns, etc. So they're not easy to procure right away. It was caught in time. So we did have to have Nest come back out and continue to pump while we replaced that valve. And that repair just for that one valve was just shy of $11,000. Basically put in a quick repair, which was a check valve. After we pulled the valve, it was just very clear that this was metal fatigue, rot over time until we could make a more permanent repair. But it's a good example of kind of what the rest of the system looks like right now. All the other pump stations are of this vintage, except for the 2 that we just did down. Not easy to Ocean Avenue right away. So we did have to have Nest come back out. So our current belt filter presses, we're looking at replacing these for a couple of reasons. One of which is currently 42 years old. They're very antiquated. They don't make parts for these anymore. Valve, it was just we have been able to keep these up and running. This is but fatigue. The other component that goes to that is, but it's a good example. The current PFAS concerns. Kind of what the rest of the system many of you may be aware that we currently compost our biosolids, except for the two that we just and turn that into a useful product. However, with the recent advent of the PFAS concerns, our current belt filter presses, we're looking at discussion with the town's insurance company, one of which is, currently and town attorney. We've decided to stop releasing that compost. They don't make parts for these anymore. We're still producing it because we have to do something with the biosolids, but we're currently stockpiling all of that compost. So it is an issue that we're going to need to address. Many of you may be aware that produce compost and biosolids, not have a place to dispose of it. Turn that into so we are looking to enter into a contract with a waste hauler advent of the PFAS so that we can have those biosolids hauled off. In discussion. The picture on the right is a new centrifuge style press. And town attorney. Although we haven't decided on the technology yet, we're probably going to be looking at something like this. Producing it because we have to do basically the waste haulers are looking for what's called a certain percentage of dry cake solids. It is an issue. The numbers that were provided by two of the waste haulers were 18 and 20% respectively. Right now we're at about 12% with the current technology that we're using. So we are looking to enter into. So we need to invest in something that's going to give us those numbers to have those biosolids to actually enter into a contract. The picture on the right is a new centrifuge style press. Although we haven't decided some considerations that go along for this. I mean, we try to account for as many variables as possible in looking ahead at these projects. Looking for, but it's hard to kind of entirely anticipate numbers that were provided by what the impacts are going to be on construction timelines. Right now, lead times, equipment procurement costs, technology that we're using. So with that said, so we need to invest in something that's. This is kind of a project phase duration summary that I put together with the three projects. Basically, we're looking at so some considerations that go the secondary clarifiers. Try to account for as many variables. Engineering design has already been completed on that. That was completed in the last round of bond funding hard to that we had entirely had procured. Anticipate, and those are already due to actually be put out to bid. On construction timelines, I'd like to put those out to bid this month. Equipment procurement costs, and that way construction could start. Hopefully, that said, late fall into early winter. This is kind of a project. The dewatering equipment coming up. The design is currently underway. Basically, we're looking at. I'm sorry. The dewatering equipment, the design is not underway. Engineering design is. We're doing some more homework right now. We want to do some more bench testing and some pilot testing with equipment manufacturers. Those are already due actually. To try and decide which equipment is going to be the best choice for the town out to bid this month to deliver the product that we're going to need. Hopefully. The pump stations. The design is currently underway for those right now. Coming up, the engineering costs associated with that's $143,000. We anticipate the construction to be right around $2.6 million. The design is not underway, and we're looking at hopefully. We're doing some more homework right now. Beginning on that, some more bench testing and some pilot testing. So just some further funding considerations. At this time, decide which equipment. We don't have those probable costs. We expect to have more reliable cost estimates toward the end of April. The pump stations and in May sometime. The design is currently. With that being said, we are proposing not to exceed bond costs of $6 million with a contingency based on the current construction costs for projects similar to the ones that we're proposing that are taking place in other municipalities. Beginning on that, it is possible after we have more reliable cost estimates. So just some further funding considerations. Adjust at this time the bond amount based on the actual costs anticipated costs. More reliable cost estimate. Just to give you an idea of what the funding impact would be on a $6 million bond. With that being said, over 20 years, proposing not to exceed bond costs. It's going to affect the sewer rate by $64.92 or 13.88%. Projects similar to annual payment of proposal would be $161,190 a year. It is possible. The municipal tax rate would be affected by 12 cents or 1.28%. Adjust an annual payment of $241,785 for the anticipated costs. This is obviously important because as
Just to
Lori
give you
said,
an idea,
the town
of
tax
what the
base
impacts would
is
be,
responsible for 60%
on
of the
$6
bond
million
payment, and the
bond,
wastewater fees pick
over
up
20
40%.
years. It's going to affect the sewer rate.
Could you explain the
by
sewer rate? What does that mean?
$64.92 or 13.8%.
Sure. So
Annual payment. Of
I'm just going to stop sharing the screen here.
$190.
So we have a structure in which basically, for lack of
an annual payment
getting into all the detail of it, is based on either residential or commercial. So a single family home, for instance, would be one sewer user unit. The current rate now, is $467.62. Businesses are different.
That's per
Could you
year.
explain the sewer rate?
That's per year,
What does that
correct.
mean?
Businesses are different depending on the type of business. For instance, a restaurant is based on the number of seats, the number of employees, any other ancillary equipment that they have, such as a fryer later, is based on either residential. So depending on what the business is or what the house is, for example, a house with the current rate with an accessory apartment would be 2 units.
Got it. That's what I was curious, just so, but a unit now is 400 and some, and we'll raise it $63.
That's per year, correct. $467
for the normal single family home.
Depending on the type of business, for instance, a restaurant.
Chris, I got a question. I assume the trade-off between the current composting operation and then going to
such as a fryer later.
A disposal contract is not a big deal financially.
For example, a
Is that
house
right?
with not a big deal.
Meaning, are we losing a lot of revenue by giving up
That's what
the
I was curious,
composting
just so, but
operation?
a unit now is 400 and some, and we'll raise it $63.
On average,
for
we
the
would get rid
normal
of
single
1,200
family home.
yards of compost a year at $4 a yard, about $4,800.
Chris, I got a question. Okay.
Sure,
I
Dave.
assume the trade-off between the current
Kai?
composting operation.
I looked it
and then
up that it
going
looks
to,
like the disposal either has to be
disposal
landfill,
contract is not
which
a big
means the
deal
PFAS
financially.
are there anyway, either that or incinerated.
Not a big
How
deal.
are you able to
Meaning,
determine
are
if
we
there's
losing
any
a lot of revenue
incineration
by
available
giving up the composting
for
operation?
the solids?
No, we're not. So currently, right now, if we were to engage in a
on
contract
average,
with either
we would get
Casella
rid of
or say Waste
1,200
Management,
yards of compost a year.
at basically
$4 a
as soon
yard,
as our product hits their
$4,800.
container, they own it. We don't typically have any
Kai?
say as to how that's
Yes.
disposed of.
I looked it up that it looks
Well,
like the disposal either
but
has to be.
it's our
waste and we
landfill,
should care about where it
which means
goes
the
because if it's
PFAS
being
are there
landfill,
anyway,
that's
either
just
that or
saving it for
incinerated.
future troubles for
How do
people. I
we-
think
Are you able to
we should at least
determine
know
if
what's
there's any
going on with it.
incineration
Sure.
available?
And secondly,
The
since
solids.
all the pump stations are about the same age,
if we were to
should you
engage in
have a
contract
backup
with either
emergency
Casella or,
valve
say, Waste
in case
Management,
one of the others gives way?
basically,
I think-
as soon as our product
We're
hits
lucky
their
to have
container,
Nest and Company
they
around,
own it.
but
We
they're
don't
not cheap
typically
either.
have,
Right.
No, we
say
were
as to
very
how
fortunate
that's
that day that could have occurred over a weekend and we
Well,
would have lost that pump station.
But it's our
altogether.
waste and we should care about where it goes.
No, so we were
because if
very
it's being
fortunate.
landfilled, that's just saving it for
Certainly,
future
if
troubles
we
for
move
people. I
forward
think
with the pump station
we should at
projects,
least know
those
what's going
valves
on
and the
with it.
existing pump station,
And secondly,
we
since
would kind of
all the pump
cannibalize
stations are
and
about
kind
the
of keep a
same
lot of
age,
those parts,
should you
just in
have a
case something
backup
was to come up with
emergency
one of the other
valve
similar
in
vintage
case one of the others
pump
gives
stations.
way? Right, I think.
Uh,
One more
yeah, I
thing,
mean,
are
it's
there
lucky to have
already
Nest and Company
generators
around,
at the
but
stations?
They're not cheap either.
There are generators
No,
at
we were-
most
we
of
were
the
very
pump
fortunate
stations.
that
There are
day.
not
Right.
generators at all of them. So typically, during a power outage, the generators, or I should say the pump stations that do have generators, those will come on automatically. We still have an operator come in, and for those pump stations that we do not have a generator at, they have to shuffle a portable generator around to keep those pumped out, just in case something was to come up with one of the
Lori,
other
do you
similar
or anyone
vintage,
know if a
pump
municipality
stations.
gets the tax credit for
One more
using
thing, are there
solar
already generators at the stations?
type of equipment?
There are generators at
We
most of the pump
don't,
stations. There are
because
not
we don't pay
generators at all
taxes,
of
so
them.
there's no tax credit.
So typically,
well,
during a
of course,
power
duh,
outage,
sorry.
the
Yeah,
generators,
no, that's fine.
or you should say the
Right,
pump stations that do have generators.
Bill and I are looking
those
at
will
getting
come
an estimate on
automatically.
a power
We still have an
wall for
operator
our
come
home
in,
instead of a
And for
generator,
those pump
which
stations
uses
that we do
solar
not have a
panels.
generator at,
And I just wondered
they
if
have
that's
to
a
shuffle a portable
possibility
generator
for
around to keep
those
those pumped out.
pump stations that don't have one now. Laurie, do you or anyone know if a
Sure.
municipality gets
So
some
it's
tax
probably
credit
not a viable
for
option,
using
Guy.
solar,
The reason being, those
type of
pumps,
equipment?
some of those are 30, 40, 60
We
horsepower
don't,
pumps.
because we don't pay
So
taxes,
there
so there's
wouldn't
no
be,
tax credit.
enough
of
energy
course.
produced there to
Sorry.
run the pumps.
Yeah, no, that's
Um,
fine.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Bill and I are
Thank
looking
you
at
so
getting
much.
an estimate on a power wall
Chris,
for
I
a
have a
phone
question.
instead of a generator.
Is there any major
which uses
concerns
solar
to do this
panels.
in
And I just
installments
wondered
or
if that's a
stages?
possibility,
Like we do
for
one
those pump
one of
stations that don't
those
have one
stations
now, and get
this
rid of
year, one next
Sure.
year, one the following
So
year,
it's
whatever it
it's
might
probably
be,
not a
to
viable
stretch out
option,
that 6
Guy.
million
The reason being, those
work
pumps,
over
some
a
of
little bit
those are
further
30,
time?
40, 60 horsepower pumps. I mean, anything's a possibility. I think we were looking at it, and trying to, because, as we're finding, nothing is
Okay.
becoming
Okay.
less expensive to do.
Thank you so much.
So I think, in the
Chris, I
interest
have a
of saving
question.
money in the long
Is there
run,
any major
also
concerns to do
securing
this
a better,
installment or
construction
stages?
contract.
Like we do
If we're looking at
one
construction
of those
companies that are
stations
wanting to bid on this work,
year,
3
one next
pump
year, one the
stations is
following year,
more
whatever it might
attractive
be,
than one.
to stretch out that 6 million,
You're going to get more done with
work
less
over
mobility
a little bit
costs.
further time?
I
One of these
mean,
things could
anything's a
fail at any
possibility.
time, right?
I think we were looking at it and trying to, because
I think it's
as we're finding, nothing is becoming
If I
less
may, Chris,
expensive to do.
part of the
So I
challenges
think,
that we're
in the
having
interest
here
of saving money in the long
when the
run,
Clean Water Act went
also
into effect in
securing a better,
72, the
construction
funds all
contract.
became available at one time. These
If we're
pump
looking at
stations,
construction
these
companies
collection
that are
systems were all built
wanting
at
to
the
bid
same
on this
time.
work, 3
That's
pump
all
stations
the
is
plan.
more attractive
So
than
what
one.
we're finding is
You're
all
going
the
to get more
infrastructure is
done
basically
with less
timed
mobility
at the
costs.
same time. So they're all coming due
one
at
of these
age
things
at the
could
same
fail
time
at any time, right?
because we haven't really been investing all along. If we were to stretch
I
this
think it's
out,
important.
which would be 14 years, one pump station a year, part of the we find ourselves that we're having here probably a somewhat of a Clean Water Act pickle with some of our infrastructure.
We
The funds
looked
all
at
became
this,
available at
the
one time.
selectmen
These
looked at
pump
this, and
stations,
we
these
had
collection
asked
systems were all
for,
built at the same time.
program from Chris
That's
to
well the
find out
plan.
what we needed
So what we're
over the
finding
number
is
of years.
all the
over
infrastructure is
20 years,
basically
whatever it is,
timed
that we
at the
looked at.
same time.
And what's been
So they're
happening
all
is we've
coming
been
due at
kicking the
age
can
at the
down
same
the road
time
for a lot of years.
because we haven't really been investing all along. If we were to stretch
We're
this
running
out,
into problems
which would be
with
14
input.
years, one pump station a year,
We've had a
we'd
lot
find
more
ourselves
intensive
probably
review with Chris
somewhat of
I know,
a
than
pickle
he's able to do right
with
here,
some of
but,
our infrastructure.
it's,
we looked
at this, it was the selectmen looked at this. Scary what we had reviewed. asked for, and it would be program scary from Chris to to anybody who find out has, what we is on the needed sewer system. over the number We've of really got, I years. mean, we just don't know, and it could go at any time. These, we're talking stuff that is, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but a lot of things that are 40 and 50 years old.
That's correct.
So, I mean, it's like, it's time to, that we gotta belly up to the bar and say, look, we gotta do what we can do as quick as we can do it. He's able to do right here, but.
I had the opportunity to meet with Chris on Tuesday, and I spent about, Chris, 2 hours with you and with Eric down at the treatment plant, and we went through it. Chris gave me an excellent tour. And if any of you have time, I know Chris has a lot to do, and he has time, you need to go through and see what's in that plant. I've been there before, but it is a highly complex operation there, and they've done a miraculous job to keep it going in the condition that it was in, and they've made a lot of great improvements. I had the opportunity to meet really have Tuesday, but you need to go and see what's going on there for yourself. 2 hours with you, and you truly appreciate how fortunate we went through it, have the people that we do working there. If any of you have time, I know Chris has a lot to do, and he has time. You need to go and they've made some great improvements, but it takes money and it takes time. But they have my support 100% complex what they want to do there. And, they had it before, done a miraculous spending time there, going in the condition have an opportunity was in, go down there. They've made a lot of great improvements.
Yeah, we would welcome that.
They really have. But you need to go and see what's going on
One more
for yourself.
Maybe this is directed to Lori and possibly to Jen. Any question, any concerns about the price tag
there because
and what it would add to the overall debt structure?
They made some great improvements.
We do have a bond that will be
They have my support.
coming
100%
offline
what they want to
at
do.
the same
You know, they
time
had it
as this
before, but
bond
after spending
will
time,
go
they
into
really-
effect.
you have an opportunity to go down there.
And so I think
Yeah, we would welcome that.
that is positive. It will not make up the full amount
Maybe
of
this is directed
debt
to
that we
Lori and
will
possibly to
see,
Jen.
but we do have
Any
a declining debt
Any concerns
schedule.
about the pricing?
And I think when Chris and Mike came before the selectmen back in November, we had a $5 million price tag. And we're certainly over 5 million down now. We hope that it would be under 6 million, but because of the timing of the procurement and when we can get authorizations, we are asking up to 6 million. But the concern is that the world is changing and our infrastructure is degrading drastically, and we just want to make everyone aware that we think we could be in a serious situation. Before the selectmen back in November, we had a $5 million price tag.
Look and see that some of
We're
those,
certainly over 5 million
some
down
of that equipment
now.
is
We
failing.
hope that it would be
Yeah, we don't
under
wanna have a
6
sequel
million,
to
but
Schitt's Creek.
because of the
That's
timing
right.
of the procurement and when we can get
Yeah, I'm not questioning the
authorization,
value. I just want to
we
make
are
sure that,
asking
you know,
up to 6
it's in
million.
line with everything else.
But
That's
the
all.
concern is that the
And just to
world
give you
is
an idea
changing
too,
and our
you know, the repair that we had
infrastructure
at Walls District Road
is
back
degrading
in January,
drastically, and we just want to
it
make
came out of
everyone
my-
aware
my
that we
collection system
think
line
we could
item.
be in a serious
And that one
situation.
repair was more than half my budget.
I
for
mean,
the
you don't
collection
have to be
system.
an engineer
We don't
just to
wanna
go
have
in.
a
Look
So
and see
it
that
was
some
a
of those,
rather large chunk of change.
some of that
for us to
equipment is
swallow.
failing.
Yeah, we don't want to have a sequel to Schitt's Creek.
That's right.
Does anybody have any other questions for
Yeah, I'm not
Chris?
questioning the value. I just want to make sure that, you know, it's in line with everything else. That's all.
Thank you,
And
Chris.
just to give you an idea too, you know, the repair that we had.
Thank
at
you.
Walls District
Thank
Road,
you, Chris.
Back in
Thanks,
January,
Mike. Mike, we'll come
it came
back
out
to you
of
in a
my-
little while.
my collection system line item. And that one
Is Werner
repair,
out here? Dave?
was more than half my budget for the collection system for the year.
There he is.
So, it was
So
it was
we
a
are going to
rather large
page
chunk of change.
203. This is the last of our capital. On 203 at our special projects, we have $50,000 where we are requesting for a climate change study. And Werner and I and Southern
Thank
Maine
you.
Planning and
Thank you,
Eric
Chris.
would be working on this. Mike, we'll come back to you in a little while. One of the challenges is certainly climate change and sea level rise, and we are seeing it impact all future projects. And so we're trying to look at the next 25 years as we make additional capital investments in roads and infrastructure. We have $50,000. And we believe it's necessary to really take some of the mapping that's available and study, show people what private and public properties will be impacted over the next 25 years and to what degree. Would be working on and look at strategies that would be available to address these different issues, as well as have a public input session on where they see priorities, and so because that impacts future zoning as well as public infrastructure funds. And so, Werner, I don't know if you have anything to add about what we're looking to accomplish and show people what private and public properties will be impacted over the next 25 years and to what degree.
We're looking to partner with Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission, to undergo what, in a lot of ways is, I think a pretty intense education, educational outreach,
because that impacts
and public
future
engagement
zoning
process,
as well as public infrastructure
what
funds.
we're looking,
And so,
what we're looking
Werner, I
to
don't
do
know
here
if you have anything to
is
add
that,
about what we're
this
looking to
engagement
accomplish.
is going to involve a combination of workshops, some web-based,
yes. So as Lori
engagement,
said,
including
we
some
are-
mapping
we're looking to
products
partner
and
with,
community
Southern
events,
Maine Planning and
just to really get
Development
the
Commission,
information
to
out to
undergo,
folks about coastal
what,
flood hazards,
in a lot of ways,
sea level
is,
rise.
I think,
Include some
pretty
historical trend
intense
studies.
education,
Looking
educational
and really
outreach,
taking a good look at our
public
current
engagement
conditions.
process.
Our
And,
future projections, and
we're looking,
getting a good
what we're
understanding
looking to
about
do
like
here
what our local
is
impacts
that,
and
this
vulnerabilities are.
engagement
is going to involve we're looking a combination of workshops, out of that, some to get some potential solutions that we can some mapping, incorporate, in our practices, just to really get to address the flood risk out to folks about looking at our land use regs and policies, sea level rise, and looking at just different barriers and opportunities to really get the community into a better position for flood resilience. Our future projections, it's getting a good understanding about I expect a rather vulnerabilities are. Robust, planning exercise, what this, out of that, what this will be. Potential solutions. We'll also take a look specifically as well for the town, at our practices, potentially impacted municipal assets. Take a look and just see how how our demographic is affected by this. Looking at just different as well, we'll be able to come up with some pretty specific data in terms of value impacts to the community, including things like assessed building values, how that ties into potential sea level rise impact. So planning exercise, what this a pretty what this will be. We're expecting we'll also take a look specifically in-depth look at our sea level rise and climate change and how it's going to affect assets. Take a look and just see how how our demographic is affected by this.
This is an important thing to do. Warner, 100%.
Pretty specific data in terms of
I agree.
value impacts to the community.
The sea levels, they're not going down, they're not receding.
Like, assessed building values, how that ties into
it seems like we have our tides
so,
have been rather strong for the last couple of months as far as high.
Expecting a pretty
and I'm really growing up as a kid.
Sea level
I don't ever hardly remember the causeway going over to the pier being flooded.
Important thing to do.
And that was raised
100%.
I think back in the 70s, 72
I
or
agree,
3, something
it
like
is.
that. And now
The
it's
sea
kind of
levels,
a
they're
common
not going
occurrence.
down, they're not receding.
Probably at least once a month, something like that.
Well,
it seems
and
like we have
Alan, it goes
tides
well
have been
beyond sea level
rather
rise.
strong for the last
Change
couple of
in
months
what's
as far
going
as
on
high.
meteorologically across the
And I'm
country.
really,
I mean,
growing
we've
up as a
gone through,
kid,
this is the second or
I don't
third
ever
spring where
hardly
we're not
remember
having any rain
the
or very little rain.
causeway going over to
And it's that Cat 4,
pier
Cat 5 that's going to really
flooded.
be the
And
killer.
that
The
was
storms are
raised.
getting stronger.
I think they are getting back in the 70s. Certainly are. And there's more and more. It seems like there's more and more tornadoes occurring earlier, probably at least once a month. It's been normal the last couple of years.
Well,
We have a lot of
Alan,
public and
it
private
goes well
properties
beyond
that
sea level rise.
that are impacted by this,
Change
so
in what's going on
this study makes perfect
meteorologically
sense to me.
across the country.
And our cat space
I
is
mean, we've gone
incredibly
through, this is
vulnerable
the second
to
or
this
third
kind of
spring
thing.
where we're not having any rain
Absolutely.
or very little rain.
Is there any other
And it's
questions or
that Cat 4,
comments on
Cat
that?
5 that's going to really be the killer, and the storms are getting
Thank you,
stronger.
Warner.
They are getting
Thank you.
stronger. They certainly
We
are.
are
And,
moving on
there's
to
more and
page
more- it seems like there's more and
73
more
is our
tornadoes
Conservation Commission budget.
Earlier.
So the Conservation
couple of years.
Commission has a budget of $1,350. They're not looking for an
that are
increase.
impacted by this, so
They
this
use
study
that
makes perfect
funding
sense
for
to me.
education
And our
as
cat
well
space is
as
incredibly vulnerable.
printing
to this
materials, etc. Sometimes they partner with
Absolutely.
other groups. Is there any other questions? Any questions on conservation? Because I'm going to have
Thank you,
Dave
Warner.
bring up
Thank you.
Jim Stockman
We are
for
moving
chems.
on to page 73 is
We
our
got Jim in the
Conservation
audience.
Commission budget.
So the Conservation Commission has a budget of $1,350. They're not looking for an increase. And I don't know if Jim wants to bring anyone else
They
with him.
use that funding for education.
If you go to
as
page
well
119,
as,
printing materials, etc. Sometimes they partner with other groups. 119 is our request,
Any
which
questions
is
on
up
conservation?
$10,000, which is
I'm gonna have
$175,000.
Dave bring up
And then the following
Jim
two
Stockman
sheets
for
after
chems.
that is the more detail of the
We
chems
got Jim
budget.
in the audience.
Jim, did you want to bring anyone else with you, or?
I'm not
Okay.
sure if Joe Carroll, Chief of
if
Operations, is
Jim wants to
available. He
bring
just
anyone
got
else
back
with
to the
him.
station from an ambulance call.
If
So
you go to page
if
119.
he's on, if he could be brought in, that would be wonderful.
I don't see
119
Joe, do
is
you,
our
Dave?
request, which is up $10,000,
Okay, so,
which is $175,000.
All right, all I
And
do
then
is
the
hit share
following two
screen and I'm
sheets
all
after
set.
that
Lori?
is the more detail of
Yeah,
the
hit share
Ken's budget.
screen and then pick
Jim,
that
did you want to bring
presentation.
anyone else with you, or?
Okay, I'm not
see
sure
if I can do
if
this.
Joe Carroll, Chief of Operations, is
job.
available. He just got
Thank
back
you.
to the station
Okay.
from an ambulance call.
Gonna make this
So,
real quick.
If he's on, if he could be brought in. that would
And I'm
be
sorry
wonderful.
for those people who have seen some
I
of
don't
this.
see Joe, do you, Dave?
Very quickly, okay, so.
If this was a pre-BC world, we would have
all
had
I
our
do is hit
ambulance
share
sitting
screen
out
and I'm
there.
all set.
We just
Lori?
bought it new in
Yeah,
2020.
hit share screen and then pick that
We're
presentation.
very proud of it. It's
Okay.
gas powered,
Do this.
and we thought we'd just
Good
share
job.
with you some
Thank
quick
you.
photos.
This is
The
gonna make
ambulance,
this
as
real
it said,
quick.
was $250,000,
If,
and it was
and I'm sorry
completely
for those
bought
people
from
who have
our
seen some of
endowment.
this.
So
Very quickly.
just very quickly going through.
If this was a
And we
pre-BC
dedicated
world,
this
we would have had
ambulance
our
to the
ambulance
memory of
sitting out
Judy
there.
Barrett, who was a
Just
long
bought it
time
new in
member
2020.
of the CHEMS
And,
board. And I don't
very
think I need
proud
to tell
of it.
anybody who
It's,
Judy Barrett was
gas-powered,
on this phone
and,
call. I think everybody knows
we thought
who she
we'd
was,
just,
but we
share with
dedicated
you
this
some quick
rig,
photos.
as we've done in the
This
past, to
ambulance, as it
Judy.
said, was $250,000.
We thought
And
we
it
would
was
just very
completely
quickly
bought
give
from
you an
our
idea
endowment.
of
Uh,
what
so,
we do, how
just
we
very
make money,
quickly,
or how
going
we
through,
don't make money because
and
we are a
dedicated this
nonprofit.
ambulance
So
to
this
the
is
memory
the
of
cost
Judy
of a
Barrett,
trip
who was a
today to the
longtime,
hospital.
member of
And
the
CHEMS is one of 41 community nonprofit EMS services in Maine.
on this phone
And
call. I
we
think
are
everybody knows
chartered
who
at
she
the
was, but we
Ground Ambulance
dedicated
Service
this rig,
which
as
means
we've
we're
done in the
not
past,
life flight.
to Judy.
We do not do transfers from hospital
we
to
thought we would just
hospital or
very
nursing
quickly
home to
give you an
hospital.
idea of-
We only really do
what we do,
transportation
how we make money,
from
or
our
how we
town or
don't
surrounding
make money
towns when
because
we're
we are a
called
nonprofit.
to the
So
hospital.
This is the cost of a trip
Our minimum
today to
service
the
level is an
hospital.
EMT.
And
Our
Kansas
maximum
won
service level is a
41
paramedic.
Community nonprofit EMS services in
Uh,
Maine.
I thought you'd like to
And
know
we are
how we do
chartered
in a
at the
calendar
Ground
year.
Ambulance
In
Service,
2020,
which
you can
means
see
we're not
the
life
data.
We do not do
309
transfers from
calls,
hospital to
108 of
hospital or
them were
nursing home to
non-billable.
hospital. We only
And this
really
gives you an
do
idea of the different
transportation
level.
from
And of
our
course, the
town or
majority
surrounding
are
towns when
transported
we're
to
called
Southern Maine
to,
Health Center.
the hospital.
And 7 times
Our
they went to
minimum
Maine,
service level
Maine
is
Med,
EMT.
and a couple of times
Our
they went to
maximum
York
service
Hospital.
level is a
So
paramedic.
you can see that we have a staff
I thought you'd like to
aboard
know
365
how we do
years,
calendar year.
days a year, and
2020,
and they're on duty down at Cape Porthos Station.
309 calls, 108 of them were
Compensation for our people.
And this gives you an idea of the different level.
We
And of
tap
course, the
into
majority are
a
transported
pool
to
of
Southern Maine Health Center.
employees.
And,
Many of
7
them
times they
work
went to Maine
full-time
Med,
in other
and a couple of
places.
times they went to York
But
Hospital.
CHEMS is
So
basically
you can see
paying them
that,
to be
we
here
have a staff
on a particular
aboard
12-hour shift.
365 years,
And a driver
days a year,
gets
and,
paid minimum, and you
they're
can
on
see
duty
very
down at
quickly
Cape
on the
Porthos
screen
Station.
our pay schedule in terms of what we're trying to do.
Compensation
The secret for us is to try to keep people and to attract people to come to CHEMS so that if you need us, you're not worried about who that person is. They are highly competent and ready to go. And that basically explains where we get our employees.
Basically paying them to be here.
The other source
on
that
a
we're very
particular
lucky to
12-hour
have is
shift.
UNE and a lot of
driver,
medical students who are
gets paid
really
minimum,
trying to get
and
some
you can
practical
see very
training.
quickly on the
And that's
screen,
very exciting for us to tap
pay
into that
schedule in terms
resource.
of what we're trying to do. The
We
secret for us
basically
is to try to keep
make our
people
money
and to attract
transporting
people, to come to
people,
CHEMS,
as I
so
said,
that
from
if you need us, you're not
Kennebunkport
worried
to a
about
hospital.
who that person
And
is.
that's the
They're
revenue
highly
on
confident
services.
and ready to go.
And so
that basically explains
there
where
really
we
are
get our
2 levels of
employees.
service here in terms of who's
The
going
other
to
source
pay.
that we're very lucky to
If you're
have
under the
is
Medicare,
UNE,
Medicaid
with a lot of
threshold,
medical students who are
you're basically
really
the
trying to get some
insurance
practical
and
training.
out of pocket.
And that's
If
very
you're over
exciting
time for us to tap into that Medicare threshold. We basically, what is kicked in from that, your insurance, and then lastly out of pocket. One of the things that we've done is we created a special subscription service to help with our revenue stream, especially for those who use our services multiple times a year. In terms of who's going to pay. The real key to CHEMS is that we have a problem. Our business model does not work because everybody is staying healthy and really doesn't want our service. And we still need to provide it. And so I heard once that for a nonprofit ambulance service to survive, you'd have to do 2,000 calls a year. We're only at 300 and some odd. The real key to CHEMS is other problem for CHEMS is that we cannot dictate the compensation from the insurance carriers, from Medicare, Medicaid. Really doesn't want our service. We had a 30% reduction recently of what is being paid. And then, of course, we're trying to get people who are self-insured. We need to get the money. If we can't get the money, we're at the sort of low end of hospitals and all the other doctors. They're all in front trying to get their money. Well, we're still here trying to collect ours. And so, from between our yearly donations and subscription program, we know CHEMS needs to grow its endowment through a capital campaign, and then of course we use that endowment each year who are self-insured to take care of the shortfall between the lows and the highs of our budget. The next screen that I want to share with you is just very quickly, it's a graphic representation of our budget for the fiscal 2020. We know 2020-21, which we're currently in, and then the new fiscal year. And then we've got 165,000, we're asking for 175,000. This is our revenue on services. We did increase our rates, the lows and the highs of our budget to be competitive within, not competitive, but we're not the lowest in York County, we're not the highest. You can see our fund drive, we can see our subscription is going up, and of course you can see that we have to, we anticipate taking about $100,000 from our endowment to meet our shortfall with the expenses in our fiscal year. This is our revenue. The new fiscal year, we think that'll be around 63,000. And so the last slide to share with you is where does it go? Well, that's really obvious. There are a couple of bumps on this that tell you very quickly that almost over 75% is payroll. We have some business expenses, that's workman's comp, that's insurance, that's going up, it's not going down. These are our operating expenses next, and really the rest of it is really very small amounts. So we're trying as hard as possible to really control our expenditures, but we need to keep these quality people, tell you very quickly, because that's what you're relying on us for. And the last statement is the CHEMS board is made up of volunteers, and the chief of operations is also a member of the board. That's going and so with that, I will hit stop share. And are there any questions? And really, the rest of it is really very.
I have a question about your endowment.
So we're trying as hard as possible.
Is there a possibility, depending upon how it's invested,
really
to have it earn a little bit more money, or have it grow a little bit faster to help with some of your expenses?
Because that's what you're relying on us for. We as the board wrestle with that all the time in terms of when do you be fiscally conservative, when do you try to take more out. our investment advisor, which is HM Payson, is advising us to do a 4% a year in order to allow the endowment to grow. But we are just not making that money on the
some of your expenses?
revenue of services fast enough, and so we have to keep going back into this endowment. Remember, the endowment last year just took a hit for $250,000 because we paid cash for an ambulance. When do you try to take more out? We've got to make that up. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Is advising us to do a 4%.
So one of the challenges with CHEMS is that they are, you know, they have a limit on their call volume. We're a small community, and so there's only so many calls you're going to get a year. And certainly we don't want them to increase calls because that would mean people are getting sick all the time. But they just don't have that ability to expand their customer base. And the result is that, you know, payroll is, they're a huge human resource agency, and so pay has continued to go up for them to remain competitive. Meanwhile, the income just, you know, they can't generate it on their call volume. We're a small community, and so there's only so many calls you're going to get a year. And certainly we don't. If you guys are all set with Jim, then we'll thank him. Getting sick all the time. But they just don't have that ability to expand their customer base. And the result is Dave is, Allison Kennaway out there? Huge human resource agency, and so meanwhile on page 215, your agenda says page 219, but that's where the income just applications actually begin. Page 215 is the spreadsheet that our Health and Social Services Committee works with Allison, Jim, then we'll and so one way in which the town several years ago decided to streamline this part of the process was a subcommittee gets together and makes their recommendations. And this nice spreadsheet they develop that shows what has been approved in the past and what they are recommending. They are recommending, I believe, you know, flat level funding. One of the agencies did not request funds this year, which is why there's a slight decrease. I don't know if anyone from Allison or the Social Service Subcommittee wants to comment. And so one way in which the town several years ago decided to streamline this part of the process was a subcommittee gets together and makes their recommendations.
I was gonna leave it up to you.
And this nice spreadsheet they developed that shows what has been approved in the past and what they are recommending.
I think
they are recommending, I believe,
only,
you know, flat level funding.
Well, I can't.
One of the agencies did not request
but
funds
only
this
2 or
year,
3 agencies have requested an increase. Given
I don't know
what's
if
been
anyone
going
from
on with the pandemic
Allison or
and
the Social Service
the
Subcommittee
financial
wants to comment.
needs of the town of Kennebunkport, we decided to hold everybody to what they had requested last year.
Leave it up to Allison.
The majority of them requested the same thing that they requested last year, so it's a fairly straightforward operation for decision to make. 2 brief comments. And as Lori pointed out, there was one company which was, or one agency, day one, which only requested $750 last year, but they just didn't get around to requesting an increase support this year. We followed up with them 2 or 3 times, never came through. They said they'll be back next year, but they were dropped from the budget. So we ended up with a budget of what they had requested last year, the $25,868 down from $28,868 for decision to make. And as Lori pointed out, there was one company requested, or one agency, and compared to 26,618, only requested $750 last year, but they just didn't get around. A reduction of $750 this year. We followed up with them 2 or 3 times, never came through. They said.
Anybody have any comments or questions on that?
They were dropped from the budget. So we ended up with a budget
Thanks, Dave.
of
Thanks, Allison.
$868.
Sure.
Down from 28,868.
Michael Claus is coming back. And we are going to page 159, which is the Shade Tree Committee budget.
And compared to 26,618 last year.
Mike, do you want to give an overview?
$750.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm trying to, slide.
Anybody have any comments or questions on that?
Thanks, Dave.
That's not what I want to do. I go to.
Thanks,
right there.
Allison.
Have you guys got, that's?
Yep. Michael Claus is coming back.
You've got the whole, you don't have
And we're
one of
going
those?
to page
you need to switch screens,
159,
Mike.
which
Yeah,
is
I
the
gotta switch
Shade Tree
screens.
Committee
Yeah, hold on.
budget.
There, how about that? Shade Tree Committee.
Mike, do you want to give an overview?
So, we work, the town works with the tree warden, and the Shade Tree Committee works with the tree warden. We meet monthly, via Zoom now, not quite as nice as in the old days. But just, for everyone who wants to know, what do we do at the Shade Tree Committee? We maintain all our town tag trees. We look after the elm trees, especially, Arbor Day. We always try to plan an Arbor Day celebration, and we work as part of Arbor Day to continue to be a Tree City USA town. The town works with the tree warden. We've also done our Project Canopy grants. Those come through the Shade Tree Committee. And we do try to educate the public through our through public programs and our website on tree quality, disease detection for trees and tree walks. The committee is very active. After the elm trees, especially. The budget for that has been pretty steady over the years. What you see it going up and down is a lot of carry forward. Usually with our elm disease prevention, sometimes that happens earlier in the season versus later in the season. It all depends on the weather as to when they do the elm work. But we really aren't looking at a lot of changes this year. We're going to try to plant some trees. The committee is very active. Nina Perlmutter's been working very hard on Project Canopy grant. If that comes through, it will help our planning operations over the years. But other than that, we see it going up and down. Plan to do our own fertilizing and do our regular elm cutting and take care of our tag trees. Sometimes that happens earlier in the season versus later in the season, and all to try to keep up with the weather.
Any questions for Mike on Shade Tree?
Nope. We really aren't looking at a lot of changes this year. We're going to try to plant some trees. I'm going to stop sharing. Nina Perlmutter's been working very hard on a Project Canopy grant. I'm just going to stop my share. It will help our planning operations. But I do not have any slides for the cemetery committee. Do our own fertilizing, and we want to go on to that. Do our regular.
Sure, that's page 165.
Take care of our tag trees. No real changes for that. So I tried to keep it quick.
Any questions for Mike on Shade Tree?
Nope. I've noticed we've been losing a lot of trees at the Rundle Cemetery. Really surprised about that. A lot of in the last year or so, quite a few of them either broke apart or actually a few of them
do not have any slides for the
collapsed.
cemetery committee. We've got, go on to that. School Street.
Sure, that's page 165.
We'll be working there probably next week. A limb went down. If we don't get to that tomorrow, we'll get to it next week. But there's been, Jimmy keeps us apprised of what's going on around town with what he's doing. And we help him out where we can. If not, we call Steve Bryan in. But generally speaking, we try to keep those costs down by doing it in-house at Public Works.
Last year or so, quite a few of them either broke apart.
And the cemetery committee is another very active committee. They have a large number of cemeteries they oversee and try to maintain and keep up as best they can.
A limb went down. If we don't get to that tomorrow, we'll get to it next week.
Any questions on cemetery?
Jimmy keeps us apprised of what's going on around town with what he's doing.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
We help him out where we can. If not,
so we are going to go to the Graves Library, and I believe Mary Lou is out in the audience, Dave, as well as Alan Lamb. And the cemetery committee is another very active committee. Page 173. They have a large number of cemeteries they oversee and try to maintain and keep up as best they can. Any questions on cemetery? Nope. Okay, thanks, Mike. So we are gonna go to the Graves Library, and I believe Mary Lou is out in the audience, Dave, as well as Alan Lamb.
Yes.
Very,
So we're
very
going to
low.
page 173.
Well, I have no slides to present.
That's better.
But just first, want to thank you all for your exceptional support this year, especially during the pandemic. And I know it's been very challenging for all of you, but we just really appreciate your amazingness, if that's a word.
Yes.
Second, we recognize that it's another year for tightening the belt a few more notches, so we requested another year of flat funding. I have no slides to present. Even though we were unable to host any of our in-person thank you all, fundraising events in 2020, and have yet to schedule anything for 2020 this year, especially during the pandemic. As you know, even though we were closed to the public for browsing, really appreciate we opened up for about 6 months, if that's a word, 4 days a week. From the end of June that it's another year for tightening the end of November, a few more notches, when the numbers started spiking in our area. So we have been closed, but keeping up with filling orders and placing them on the bench for people to pick up 6 days a week. We've been delivering books. Have yet to schedule anything back for 2020. In March, we were delivering toilet paper, newspapers, food, many other things to our older patrons during the mandated shutdown. For about 6 months. We developed some wonderful programs online right about this time last year, and have been continuing with them ever since. When the numbers started so if you haven't checked any of those out, we have a YouTube page, and filling orders and Kennebunkport TV is now kindly showing some of our programs. We've been delivering books. So we in March, I think our patrons have been very appreciative of getting the to-go orders and crafts and bags of books during the mandated and watching events. It's definitely not wonderful programs like coming in and browsing for your own materials, but we've been trying to with them ever since. Even calling and checking up on people if we haven't seen them in a while to see if they need anything. YouTube page and one of the biggest things I noticed this year was, and I will never take it for granted again, so the importance of our volunteers. I think our patrons there's just a handful of us in here every week getting the to-go orders and crafts, when you have and watching 50 volunteers throughout the year that help with various things to run the library, you realize how fortunate you are, and I can't wait to get them back into the building to help us serve this great community again. One of the biggest things I noticed, I don't know if anyone has any questions for me with regard to our budget that we submitted, but happy to try to answer anything I can. There's just a handful of us in here every week, and
does anyone have any questions for Mary Lou?
50
Thank you for everything you do, Mary Lou.
Oh, wow.
For the adults and children of the community.
How fortunate you are. My great pleasure. I can't wait to get them back into the building to
I second that, and Janelle says hi.
I can't believe she's driving.
Yeah, you're not the only one.
Has any questions for me with regard to our budget that we submitted, but happy to.
Thank you very much, Mary Lou.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Alan, have you noticed that there's an audience member with their hand up?
You do, Mary Lou.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
For the adults and children of the community.
My great pleasure.
I second that, and Janelle says hi.
Oh.
I can't believe she's driving.
Yeah, you're not the only one.
Thank you very much, Mary Lou.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Alan, we noticed that there's an audience member with their hand up.
Okay.
All right. We should, I believe Richard Smith is in the audience.
Oh.
and Mary Gickness as well for the Cape Porpoise Library presentation. So Cape Porpoise Library is on page 177. And we have our appropriation of $14,550. And then behind that are two pages that give details about the Cape Porpoise Library budget. Is in the audience.
Dick is not here today. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Can you all hear me? Okay, so first I'd just like to thank the Board of Selectmen and the town of Kennebunkport for all of your past support. We really couldn't do what we do without your funds. They help us to provide the books and services to our patrons from Cape Porpoise, Goose Rock Beach, and Kennebunkport, and also to visitors from away. Our library, if you haven't been there, is somewhat unique. As an addition to books and CDs and DVDs, we also provide Wi-Fi 24/7, copy services, fax services, form filling out services. We deliver books to shut-ins. Okay, so first I just like to provide notary services both in the library and in nursing homes and in patrons' homes. What we do, and we even do weddings. So we kind of do it all, and all of these services are free at Cape Porpoise Library from Cape Porpoise. So this year we are requesting $14,550, the same amount that we requested last year. If you haven't been there, we as a group, as an addition myself and the library volunteers are committed to make up the difference in our budget by self-funding. We copy services, are hoping to have a book fair, and we're hoping to have a prelude fair. And notary services. I am too. In the library. Yeah, and we never really know what's going to come along. Last year, and we a large part of our fundraising was face masks. I made over 1,000 face masks, and many of them were sold to the library. And but I don't really want to do that again. One, I don't want to sew them again, and I want the pandemic to go away. And we, as a group, so. Myself, that's it in a nutshell. And the library volunteers. I encourage all of you to visit if you haven't, because it's really fun. It's a step back in time at Atlantic Hall. We're hoping, and we are currently open a book fair to patrons on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 4. And we will expand our hours. We never really know as soon as I am fully vaccinated, which will be around mid-April. Fundraising. So right now we're just keeping it. I made over 1,000 face masks, and I do. Many of them were sold at the library. We don't have the option of patrons requesting books online because our catalog is not online. So we have an informal system where patrons call me. I meet them at the library, and so I'm usually at the library every day. And patrons come in and pick their books. Two patrons on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 4.
Well, thank you very much.
And we will expand.
You guys do a lot with little.
As soon as I am fully vaccinated. We have great volunteers, and so right now Cape Porpoise is special. You know, the people in Cape Porpoise are pretty awesome. We don't have the option of patrons requesting books online.
What about you, Mike?
So we have an informal system where patrons call me. I meet them at the library.
Any questions for Cape Porpoise?
And patrons come in and pick their books.
Thank you very much, Mary.
And that's it. You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. You guys do a lot.
So the next budget is on page 181.
We have
and it is the Parsons Way budget. So Parsons Way is along Ocean Avenue. The Parsons Way Committee is looking for a $300 increase because they have seen an increase in their contractual expenditures. Basically, they focus on cutting and pruning and maintaining Parsons Way, maintaining the corridors, and limiting poison ivy, etc. in that area. Thank you very much. They also are the ones in charge of the memorial benches along Parsons Way. So the next budget is on page request is $3,800, and it is the Parsons Way budget. So Parsons Way is along Ocean Avenue. The Parsons Way Committee is looking for a $300 increase because they have seen an increase in their contractual expenditures. Basically, so our last budget is on page 191, and this is our miscellaneous agent orders and limiting poison ivy, etc. Memorial Day is, they also are the ones in charge of the what we fund the American Legion for expenses related to $3,800. The flags at Veterans Parade, as well as the parade, the Memorial Day parade, and the PA equipment we use. The Dog Square Monument is funding for the Seacoast Garden Club to maintain year-round the vegetation and beautiful plantings there. That's a volunteer group, so this just pays for the supplies. 4th of July is normally our half of the cost of the 4th of July fireworks. Kennebunk actually does contracting. There is $0 there this year because the year we are currently in, we had funded fireworks and we did not have fireworks on the 4th of July. So Jen and I believe we can just carry those funds forward into next fiscal year and use that funding for fireworks that may or may not be coming up in 2021. So this just pays for the supplies. The Southern Maine Veterans Memorial is a request for the 4th of July fireworks cemetery that is in Springvale for veterans, and they are requesting $500. And then the senior center at Lower Village is a request every year to help support their operations there as well for our seniors forward into next fiscal year. And use that. So this is actually seeing a decrease this year because of the 2021. Not budgeting for the 4th of July fireworks this year. Is a request for the. Is there any questions or comments on any of that? Is in Springvale for veterans, and they are requesting $500. And then the senior center at Lower Village is a request every year to help support. So at this point, their operations there as well. We have gone through the budget. So this is actually seeing a decrease do need to get you back a recommendation on the Cape Porpoise Pier for the 4th of July over the next week. Mike and I will do and send that information out to you, and I'm sure it'll be a topic of discussion at the selectmen's meeting next week. The schedule shows that the selectmen would be making their recommendations next Thursday. We would then be sending those recommendations out to the budget board, and then they would meet the following Thursday, the first Thursday in April, to vote on their recommendation. Do need to get you back. Is there any information that the selectmen or budget board is seeking at this point, or additional questions that they have for Jen and I or other departments to follow up on? A topic of discussion at the selectmen's
I think you
meeting
guys
next
have been
week.
very clear. With
The schedule shows
Absolutely.
that the selectmen
Great.
would
It's
be
been a
making
great
their
budget
recommendations next
presentation from
Thursday.
everybody.
We
Truly
would then
awesome.
be sending
Yes.
those recommendations
I agree.
out to the budget board, and then they would meet the following Thursday, the first Thursday in April, to vote on
And you got
their
us through
recommendation.
2020 just fine. Thank you, Laura.
Is there any information
We're all
that
still
the
standing,
selectmen or
thank
budget
goodness.
board is seeking at this point, or
It
additional
felt
hit or miss questions some that of they those have for days, Jen but and I or other
Well,
departments?
we didn't, no one
follow
else
up on?
noticed.
I think you guys. Laura, do you have anything else? With this.
I don't have
Absolutely.
anything else, but if
Great.
anybody
Been a
thinks
great
of any additional
budget
questions,
presentation from everybody.
let
Truly
us know and we'll get back to you.
I
Real
agree.
quick, our budget board meeting the first week, the first Thursday of April. I just don't have my schedule in front of me. Is that going to be 6 o'clock? Does anyone know offhand, or I'll look it up? 6? We're all
Six,
still
yeah.
standing, thank goodness.
April, would you like to adjourn your budget?
It felt
board?
hit or miss some of those days, but
I hear a motion to
No,
adjourn.
we didn't, no one else
So moved.
noticed.
Second?
Laura, do you have anything else?
Second. All those in favor?
I don't have anything else,
Aye.
but if anybody thinks of any additional
All right, we're adjourned.
questions,
Thank you.
let
night,
us
thanks-
know and
thank
we'll
you,
get back to
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Our
I move
budget
we
board
adjourn.
meeting the first
Night, all.
week, the first
Thanks.
Thursday of
Bye.
I have
April.
a
just don't
first. Is
have
there
my,
a second?
Schedule in front of me. Is that
I'm
going to
gonna
be
take a
6
roll
o'clock?
call.
Does
Sheila?
anyone know offhand?
Aye.
I'll look it up. 6?
Ed,
6.
Aye.
Pat,
Aye.
April, would you like to
Mike?
adjourn your budget
Aye.
committee? Alan says aye.
Do I hear a
Motion
motion to
carries.
adjourn?
Good night, everyone.
So moved.
Thank you,
Good
Laura.
night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All right, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
I move we adjourn.
Night, all.
Thanks, bye.
I have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm gonna take a roll call. Sheila,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Pat,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Alan says aye. Motion carries. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you,
Good
Laura.
night.
Thank you.
Bye.